Pleasant day to one and all. As Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation, witnessing our destination soar within the tourism industry gives me immense pleasure. My team and I continue to voice the need for increased airlift to our Federation of Saint Kitts and Nevis, as it is the catalyst that will drive travel to our island, thereby providing economic opportunities for our people. In 2023, I continue to honor my pledge to ignite regional connectivity between our neighboring Caribbean counterparts. I'm extremely delighted to share that the regional air carrier, Caribbean Airlines, will commence services to our Federation on the 24th of July 2023 from Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, en route to Antigua to Saint Kitts. I'm also excited that Caribbean Airlines will commence routes from Bridgetown, Barbados to Saint Kitts on the 29th of July 2023. The airline will use its 72-seater ATR aircraft for these newly announced services. The impact of this will tremendously be positive for all of us. Our people will have the convenience of island hopping within hours, eliminating the recent challenge of traveling across the region. The restoration of interregional travel to our Federation, especially at this point in time, is a major achievement for all of us. My team and I continue to sustain partnerships, ensuring the Caribbean region returns as our second largest source market. Caribbean Airlines has maintained a stellar reputation as one of the leading air carriers in the region. Therefore, I extend my deepest gratitude to their team for extending their hand in partnership to make today's announcement a reality and for their unwavering support. Our tourism industry continues to punch above its weight. More flights mean more heads in bed and new business opportunities, thus indirectly creating more job opportunities for our people. Our people have more places to visit, avail advanced medical facilities, convenience to our students traveling to and from university, and remarkable cultural exchanges between the region. Caribbean Airlines, we welcome you and we look forward to this great partnership moving forward. I thank you.
How do you act for the SDGs?
I act for the SDGs by supporting our local market and stocking up on nutrient-rich fruits and vegetables.
We act for the SDGs when we clean up after ourselves when liming on the beach, to reduce litter on the land and in the sea.
I act for the Sustainable Development Goals by recycling natural material from my organic farm to responsibly create nourishing, cruelty-free products.
I act for the SDGs by creatively charting my own course as an artist and entrepreneur.
I act for the SDGs by partnering to minimize waste and fulfill the No Plastic Mondays promise.
I act for the SDGs by exercising regularly to maintain good health and well-being.
We act for the SDGs by coming together to have a voice so that our issues can be represented in national policy, development, and planning.
I act for the SDGs by diversifying and expanding education to visualize inclusion.
I act by implementing sustainable agricultural practices such as hydroponics, ground cover, orchard farming, and all those things that you've seen outside.
I act by turning off all the lights and electronics in my class at the end of the day and educating my students on the importance of energy efficiency.
I act by producing a healthy organic harvest to feed communities.
We act for the SDGs by making sure to turn off the tap to conserve water when we are washing our hands.
I act by cooking healthy meals and being mindful and intentional about the foods I consume.
The 17 SDGs are our pathways to transformative sustainability. Let's create the future we want to see by acting now for the achievement of the 2030 Agenda.
Greetings, our citizens and residents of our stunning islands of Saint Kitts and Nevis. It is with great pleasure and enthusiasm that I address you today as we embark on the upcoming tourism season. As I reflect on the gains of the past few months, I am indeed optimistic of the prospects that lie ahead. I would like to extend my sincerest thanks to all of the stakeholders who continue to work in making our destination one of the most sought-after destinations in the world. This achievement has been possible due to the collective efforts of the government, industry partners, and local communities who have worked tirelessly to create a vibrant tourism product. Sunday, 1st October 2023 will mark the beginning of the cruise season, and with it comes many opportunities. We will welcome a total of 18 inaugural calls. The largest ship in the world, Icon of the Seas, will be visiting our shores on January 30th, 2024, with a capacity of 7,600 passengers. Featured on the inaugural lineup will be several high-end vessels from various lines, which include Celebrity, Virgin Voyages, and Ritz-Carlton. These magnificent ships redefine luxury and offer an unparalleled experience to our discerning guests. With opulent amenities and personalized services, these vessels attract high-spending passengers who seek exclusivity and indulgence. Their presence ensures that our destination remains at the forefront of the luxury travel market, stimulating economic growth and creating avenues for local businesses. This is in fact keeping with our goal to attract high-value visitors who contribute significantly to the local economy through shopping, dining, and excursions. Similar to last season, we will see fewer calls from Carnival Cruise Lines due to the removal of a number of ships from its fleet, including Carnival Fascination. We will continue to experience the effects of the loss of San Juan as a home port. This has resulted in the shortening of cruise itineraries, as cruise lines are now taking a longer route to the Eastern Caribbean due to home porting out of Florida. This fact is coupled with one of the most critical challenges we are facing in the industry today: the introduction of regulations to protect the environment through the limitation of carbon emissions from cruise lines has become a major concern for industry partners. We are all aware that it is our responsibility to protect our environment. We support all efforts geared towards climate adaptation and climate mitigation. One of the efforts being undertaken by cruise liners to protect our environment is the concept of slow steaming, whereby cruise lines are required to reduce vessel speed to conserve fuel and reduce gas emissions. Being mindful of this concept and the voyage from Florida to the destination in the Eastern Caribbean, cruise liners now experience extended itineraries. We, as a destination, will continue to receive calls from Carnival nonetheless, and all other cruise lines that have previously graced our shores. For the upcoming season, we are poised to welcome a total of 342 calls, bringing a capacity of 857,488 passengers to our shores. While we continue to look at the arrival numbers, I must encourage us to do all that we can to increase visitors' spend on the island. Despite the uncontrollable changes in the cruise sector, our airlift expansions continue to be on an upward trajectory. We will, for the first time, welcome JetBlue to our shores with its thrice weekly flights, beginning Thursday, 2nd November 2023. United Airlines has expanded its service with an extension up to August 2024. This season, we will also see an increase in flight capacity from our partners at Air Canada. We have also added regional lift from Inter-Caribbean Airways and Caribbean Airlines. As such, we anticipate a 14% system-wide increase in airlift capacity for the 2023-2024 winter season. I have met with all the agencies to assess our readiness for the upcoming cruise and winter season. The St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority, the Urban Development Corporation, the Frigate Bay Development Corporation, and the Saint Kitts Tourism Authority, and all other stakeholders who have assured me that our destination is on track to welcoming all our visitors to our shores. In closing, I would like to thank you for your contribution over the past few months. Let us continue to work together to improve our tourism products. I wish for you all a successful season. Thank you.
Seabourn as a company started coming to Saint Kitts about 15 years ago when we started coming with our original 3 ships, which were Pride, Spirit and Legend. And that partnership continued as our fleet was growing, our partnership in Saint Kitts was growing as well. So continuing with Odyssey, Sojourn and Quest, who were visiting your capital and then coming here as well into the beautiful Carambola beach. The latest addition to our fleet, which is Seabourn Pursuit, which is anchored here today, has been only delivered to Seabourn 2 months ago, and I think the successful partnership between Saint Kitts and Seabourn, as well, not only Seabourn but the cruising industry as well, it is the fact that we already came to Saint Kitts, came here to provide to our guests memorable experiences, coming to the beaches, enjoying the hospitality of your island, and enjoying it being here. So it's very, very successful partnership, which I'm quite sure that's going to continue in the future.
For us as a destination, I think it is in keeping with our overall strategic plan to position the destination on the luxury travel market. This is one of the newest ships built about 2 months ago. It shows that we still have a strong partnership with Carnival, and we are positioning ourselves on the luxury market. And I think it's a good indication that we are on track in terms of our strategic plan. Well, for the upcoming season, we can expect a number of luxury vessels, like I said, all a part of the strategic plan, which will translate into higher spend. I think it would give an economic boost to the Federation when we have high spending passengers. And so that's one of the things for the season. We also have a number of inaugural calls, so we'll see a number of inaugural calls as well, I think between 15 to 18. So we're in for a good season as it relates to cruise tourism.
I think this has been an amazing event, especially for the first time that we're actually doing it. I was lucky enough to be a judge, so I was able to judge the pork, the fish, and the chicken, and it was really tough. I think this has been an outstanding crowd that's come out here for this, and I think next year it's going to be even bigger and better. So I think it's been a really big success.
Well, to be honest, I came out here very, very, very prepared. I know that I had this. I've been hearing it all the time that I got the best pork, so I just came out here to display.
Well, the feel actually really and extremely great. I mean, it ain't easy to be number one. You know, I mean, a lot of time, hard work, you know, and I really appreciate this. I really appreciate everything that management have done to make this happen. And I'm actually looking forward for more of this. If it can happen every day, I will be grateful.
For me personally, it was just a journey, something I wanted to pursue. I'm grateful for it. I don't know if next year I'm going to be back to defend the trophy or what, but it is what it is. It was a great experience. Thank tourism for the experience. Looking forward to see something new next year, at least add something to it. If you like it and you got a passion for it, you will enjoy it.
Actually, when I thought about Grill Fest, I was actually thinking about our local community. It was actually during COVID, and so many persons were suffering because those individuals who depend on individuals to come and buy their food, they weren't able to make a living. And also, when we think about it, the community needs to be involved in tourism. Tourism is everybody's business. And the main goal of tourism is to reach every single person. And so if that is not happening, then we're not benefiting from the industry. And so that was one of the main reasons for having this event, because now we can have our local grillers on showcase. We can also promote our local cuisine. And as part of our Venture Deeper campaign, this is critical because we want our visitors to immerse themselves in the experience. I had a wonderful time at the event. We did come out and we had a great time. The grillers were able to interact with the crowd. I think the crowd had a good time. We had gifts. We thank our sponsors for coming on board with us. And now it's evening time and we have live entertainment. The crowd is still buzzing. The crowd is still coming. And I think we've had a great time today.
A pleasant morning to all of you, those who are here with us in person and those who are tuned in virtually. I am Mrs. Adelcia Connor-Falance, the Press Secretary to the Prime Minister of Saint Kitts and Nevis, Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, and I'm your moderator and chair for today's national consultation. At this point, I'll go straight ahead. We'll stand for the national anthem, and our songstress, Mrs. Michaela Richardson, a Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College student, will do us the honor, and this will be immediately followed by invoking the presence of the Almighty God by the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Handley.
O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from stormy blasts.
Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Terence M. Drew, Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, National Security and Immigration, Health and Social Security, the Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Lanine Blanchard, honorable members of the Federal Cabinet, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education, Youth Empowerment, Social Development, Gender Affairs, Aging and Disabilities, Ecclesiastical and Faith-Based Affairs, Housing and Human Settlement, the Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley. Senior Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade, Industry, Commerce and Consumer Affairs, Economic Development and Investment, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas. Minister of Public Infrastructure, Energy, Utilities, Domestic Transport, Information, Communication and Technology and Posts, the Honorable Conris Maynard. Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, the Honorable Senator Gath Wilkin. Minister of Sustainable Development, Environment and Climate Action and Constituency Empowerment, the Honorable Senator Dr. Joyelle Clark, who is with us virtually. The Honorable Senator Iseline Phillip, Minister of State with responsibility for youth empowerment, aging and disabilities, social development and gender affairs. Cabinet Secretary Dr. Marcus L. Natter. Leaders of His Majesty's loyal opposition. Other members, honorable members of the National Assembly. Head of the Public Service, Ms. Thelma Richard. Financial Secretary, Ms. Hilary Hazel. Permanent Secretaries of the Federal Government of the Nevis Island Administration. Ambassador Larry Vaughan, the head of the Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit. National and special advisors, heads of departments, and other senior government officials. CEOs, chairpersons, and general managers of statutory bodies and authorities, members of private sector entities, our vibrant, brilliant youth and young professionals from across Saint Kitts and Nevis, our online audience, members of the media. I extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to the National Consultation, which is being held under the theme, Transformation to a Sustainable Island State, a conversation with the nation's youth. It is an honor to stand here before you as we embark on this groundbreaking dialogue, which is led by our visionary Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, and supported by key ministries dedicated to our nation's sustainable island state agenda. This event represents a significant milestone in our collective journey towards a more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable future. At this point, I will give welcome to Ms. Laverne Quealy, Senior Director in the Ministry of Finance, who will deliver our welcome remarks.
Mr. Prime Minister, please allow me to adopt the protocol which has been ably established. Good morning. On behalf of the Ministry of Finance and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to you who have joined us here at the Saint Kitts Marriott Resort and in the virtual space for this consultation convened under the theme, Transformation to a Sustainable Island State, a conversation with the nation's youth. A special welcome is extended to our students and young professionals, because as communicated by today's theme, this is your forum. Saint Kitts and Nevis is undertaking a renewed thrust to become a sustainable island state. Today, you will provide the necessary guidance which will translate the Sustainable Island State Development Agenda into actionable programs, projects, and activities. This development agenda is vital to our efforts to build resilience as a small island developing state. As our small size, exposure to increasingly severe natural disasters such as hurricanes, and reliance on overseas markets resulting in supply chain interruptions, imported inflationary pressure, and the loss of foreign exchange earnings further exacerbates our vulnerability. The agenda will align with our commitments outlined in the Paris Agreement, the multilateral environmental agreements, our national determined contribution, and our national development planning framework. As a result, we aim to ensure sustainable lives and livelihoods through the development of resilient industries, utilities, growth sectors such as agriculture and tourism, essential services including social protection, health, and education. This transformation will be underpinned by sustainable fiscal and debt management and research and development. This vision of our future cannot be achieved without your input and action. For although there are low-hanging fruits, this is a long-term process. Therefore, you will not only tell your children you are here to give ideas, but as our journey to a sustainable island state continues, be able to identify and show your tangible contribution which evolved from your investment and actions in the years ahead. This morning, I encourage all of you not to be shy, if there are indeed shy persons among you, but to be bold in putting forward your questions and ideas that will make our vision of a sustainable island state a reality. In conclusion, I leave you with the words of a Native American proverb: we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. As we have borrowed our nation from you, it is now your turn to assist in the visioning that will create a sustainable development trajectory so that what you have borrowed will redound to a more sustainable and resilient nation for the generations yet unborn. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Quealy, for setting the tone for today and delivering such wonderful welcome remarks. At this point, we will have the Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Terence Drew. Please give him a warm welcome as he addresses this forum.
Good morning to all. Morning to all. And it's a bit early in the morning for some. I once read somewhere an interesting quote from an emperor of Rome. It was quite interesting. He said, "What is bad for the hive cannot be good for the bees." And in that, I get the sense that if the hive is not taken care of, the bees who think they can make it otherwise, they too will see their demise. I think the moral of the story is that all of us who benefit from the hive, we must all work together to preserve the hive. For as much as we think we can do it alone, if we lose the hive, we are all losers. But then you can look at it from the other perspective. What is good for the hive is also good for the bees. And if we work to maintain the hive, in effect, we are working to preserve ourselves. The story is we have to work together to preserve our beautiful Saint Kitts and Nevis, and by extension, we are preserving ourselves. And if we work not to preserve Saint Kitts and Nevis, but all of our actions are totally for self-interest, as much as you think you achieve so much on your own, if your own country is not preserved, you yourself will soon see your demise. So let us all work together to make sure that we create a sustainable island state, the state of Saint Kitts and Nevis. Why is it so important that we do that? But before I get into that, I want to recognize, of course, all those who were mentioned in the beautiful order of precedence that was presented by the press secretary. But allow me to recognize the ministers around the table. And I will start with the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, who also did the invocation. I want to recognize the Honorable Conwys Maynard, Minister of Infrastructure Ital, our learned AG, Honorable Gart Wilkin, our Minister of Youth Ital, Honorable Aislinn Phillip, and to also recognize our CAPSEC, who is here, Dr. Marcus Natter, and the Financial Secretary, who is the technical lead in the Ministry of Finance. I want to recognize her team who is here as well, and to recognize those who are also at the head table, and to especially recognize the youths of Saint Kitts and Nevis. What we are seeking to achieve here is really to establish an island state that the youths can have something really to inherit. If we don't get it right, we run the risk of losing what we have, and in the end, they would have nothing. And that is why we say that they have to be at the forefront, leading to the establishment of such a state, saying to us that they want a state to inherit, and ask us to do what is necessary to make sure that we do such, but also to ask them to be a part of the establishment of this sustainable island state. I will start with some pessimism, but end with optimism, that our very existence as two islands is at risk, physical risk. With climate change and the risk of going past 1.5 degrees Celsius as an increase in temperature, that would result in greater storms and greater frequency as well in terms of strength and frequency. That will also result in what we are dealing with, an extended drought in Saint Kitts and Nevis. The lack of water security is part of the climate change. The threat of Cat 5 hurricanes is part of climate change. The seaweed that is scientifically called sargassum, that is now showing up on our shores, affecting the very beauty of our beaches, is as a result of climate change. The mold that is growing so much more quickly in your buildings and offices, this is a result of climate change. The fact that people are suffering from heat injury and more dehydration and all the complications that come with it, worsening your heart condition, your diabetes, your hypertension, shortening man's life on earth. When you look at the numbers, a significant portion of this can be as a result of climate change. Wars are expected to be fought over water on continents as lakes dry up and rivers disappear as a result of climate change. The lesson then is climate change is upon us. And as a resilient people who never throw in the towel, we are small, but we are, and we are, that Talawan is needed now. It's of course a Kittitian word, right? That is needed now so that we can deal with the scourge of climate change. So on behalf of the government, I extend a warm welcome to everyone present here this morning. And I am especially pleased to welcome our specially invited guests, our youths. I am delighted, of course, to see so many of you and to see you at the front line of this discussion. This is the first national consultation for my administration, and I am grateful for the opportunity to host this year's event as part of the government's budgeting process. Our meeting today comes ahead of the estimates committee meetings, where we will deliberate on the revenue and expenditure proposals for the various line ministries. These discussions will focus on how the government's financial resources would be prioritized and allocated for the 2024 fiscal year and over the medium term. We have chosen the theme of this year's national consultation to be Transformation to a Sustainable Island State, a budget conversation with the nation's youth. This theme is reflective of the government's commitment to fulfill its objectives in pursuit of our sustainable island state agenda. It also signals our administration's commitment to giving our youth a voice in any dialogue that speaks to the development of our beloved Saint Kitts and Nevis. As an inclusive government, we must consider the contribution of our young persons and all policies that affect them. We therefore welcome all our youths here today as partners and leaders in our pursuit to transform Saint Kitts and Nevis into this great idea of a sustainable island state. Let's put our hands together for our youths who are here with us this morning. Today's consultation is an opportune time for us to consider not only our achievements, but also some of the key challenges and prospects to attain the status of a sustainable island state. Achieving sustainable development in Saint Kitts and Nevis requires building resilience to the economic and environmental vulnerabilities that we face as a nation. Critical to this is the need for an economic development strategy that will deliver inclusive and sustainable economic growth, diversification, and structural transformation. I am happy to report that we have approved our new National Development Plan for the next 15 years and have also completed our first voluntary national review, signaling our renewed commitment to accelerating the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. These important initiatives would guide the government's mission to transform the Federation into a sustainable island state. As the Federation continues to grapple with the increasing threat of climate change and the negative effects of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, and of course there's a new war that has developed in the Middle East, we see the effect on commodity prices and global supply chains. Our government has implemented a number of initiatives to help cushion the impact of these exogenous shocks on individuals and businesses. Since taking office in August 2022, we have maintained a number of tax measures designed to support the recovery of our country from the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, and have instituted the following new initiatives. Immediately open the country for business with the rest of the world without restrictions. 2, paid 2 rounds of CBI dividends for the first time in the CBI Histories program. Introduce free tuition for our CFBC students. And I see many of them here and hope that they would have benefited from this initiative. Introduce a dedicated program for medical assistance for any child who needs medical attention overseas. And a lot of children thus far have been saved as a result. We have reduced interest rate from 9% to 5% on student loans at the Development Bank of Saint Kitts and Nevis. And these are existing loans and new loans. And this will save our students $15,000 at least during the time that they're studying for their first degree. And over the lifetime of the loan, we are expecting them to save at least $50,000 to $60,000. And as you know, the United States has just implemented a similar measure. In fact, during the month of September, which was dedicated to a celebration of 40 years as an independent nation, our government provided additional support to our citizens and residents under the Independence 40 Reset program. Some of the initiatives was a bonus to our workers who have worked so tirelessly hard over these 40 years to solidify us as an independent nation. Our back-to-school voucher for all primary and secondary school students, recognizing that many parents had difficulties in this post-COVID-19 economic environment as we seek to recover fully. Concessions and building materials up to the value of $500,000 for first-time home owners and renovations until December 2024. We also moved to help those who would have suffered the loss of utilities such as water supply and electricity supply. And so we want to thank all of our workers for their significant contribution to establishing Saint Kitts and Nevis as an independent country respected across the world. Indeed, as a first step, we continue our efforts to provide the basic needs for all our citizens and residents consistent with the Sustainable Development Goals 1 to 8 that are related to zero poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, clean water, affordable and clean energy, decent work, and of course, and economic development. The implementation of the Sustainable Island State Agenda would allow us to address the vulnerabilities that we face as a small island developing state and to retain our progress and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. The Sustainable Island State Framework is therefore based on 7 pillars of transformation, namely water security, and we have started significant work. Energy transition, we have also started significant work there, which you'll hear later. Food security, sustainable industry, sustainable settlements, circular economy, and circular protection. These are the 7 pillars of transformation within this framework to get us to a sustainable island state. As shown in the program before you, we look forward to the presentations that would give further details on our sustainable island state framework, the central government's fiscal and economic performance, as well as the economic development outlook, would also be presented by the relevant line ministries. We therefore invite you to give your full attention to these presentations, and we welcome your valuable input. Your input is critically important. We welcome that input on how we can successfully transform Saint Kitts and Nevis into a sustainable island state together. We all need to work together to achieve this goal, to ensure that as a state, our future is guaranteed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. At this point, I know that you're eager for the interactive section, but before we get to that point, we're going to have a few presentations, a series of presentations by the various ministries that will delve into the comprehensive Sustainable Island State Agenda, tackling issues such as water and food security, as the Prime Minister would have mentioned earlier, sustainable LNG and industry, climate action, and economic stability, just to name a few. We will begin the presentations with the Ministry of Sustainable Development. Mr. Carlton Phipps, Director of Statistics, will deliver the presentation.
Pleasant good morning to all. I may accept the protocol already established. I save and accept to recognize the Honorable Prime Minister and other members of his cabinet. Very welcome to all the specially invited guests and to the students, which will do this presentation this morning. Now, my presentation from the Statistics Department, Ministry of Sustainable Development, would focus on the economics, the developments in the economy. I will try to make it as simple as possible, recognizing that we have a number of students and you may not be all economics students. So basically, the highlights being the performance of the economy over the period 2020 to 2023 leading to 24. Now, all of us would remember very clearly between 2020 and 2021, that was the period of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the economy would have declined by approximately 15% or $367 million loss in economic activity. Our economy up to 2019 had an estimated value in terms of economic activity of about $2.3 billion, EC dollars that is, and would have seen a significant decline in those 2 years in which we were significantly impacted by COVID. Some key sectors that were impacted: construction, the wholesale retail sector, I would say distributive trade sector. The tourism, you know that many of the hotels were closed down during this period, and also the transportation sector, or the flights stopped coming for a while, the cruise ship did stop coming for a while. So in this chart we have here is showing the steep decline in the economy during that period of the pandemic. Now, Saint Kitts and Nevis was not the only country to be significantly impacted by the pandemic. Throughout the region, throughout the world, countries were significantly impacted during this period. Particularly in 2020, you would have seen that Saint Kitts would have declined, economic activity would have declined by approximately 14.5%. But across other countries, Antigua 20%, St. Lucia 24%, Trinidad and Tobago almost 8%, that we were affected all across the region. Now looking at that in terms of real numbers, would have seen tourist arrivals in 2019, this is pre-pandemic, was about 122,000. And during the period of the pandemic, that those numbers would have declined significantly. 2022 basically represent the beginning of the recovery, as the Prime Minister would have mentioned, that in 2022 that there was a full opening up of the economy, removing the restrictions, and it was seeing that gradual increase in our various indicators. The cruise numbers begin to rise again, the tourist numbers, etc. We also look at employment. The same thing in terms of the number of persons employed, that during the period of the pandemic that there would have been significant decline in employment. Notwithstanding government or the public administration sector, that those numbers remain basically the same because government, unlike the other sectors, did not have a layoff of persons during the period of the pandemic. Again, in 2022, we see that the numbers started picking up, that the recovery have started. So for our estimates for 2022 in terms of the performance of the economy, that after the prolonged impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, 2020 and 2021, that we have seen a 9.6 rebound in the economy. And this is following, let's say, a 15.3% decline in the previous 2 years. The key sectors of growth being the wholesale retail sector, the hotel and restaurant sector as the tourists started coming back, the transportation and communication storage sector as the cruise ships start coming back. Also see expansion in the financial services and public administration. Now, the economy is made up of generally 15 sectors, and five sectors I have here, the main 5 sectors, these contribute about 40% to the recovery in 2022. So we see significant increase in the hotel and restaurant sector, also the wholesale retail, as persons were re-employed, etc., that they had the financial being to engage in various activities. Again, in 2022, I would have presented this slightly before, where you see the recovery have started in terms of the pickup from the pandemic period. Now, looking at 2023, we are 9 months going on into 2023. We are projecting a 4.6% increase in economic activity. The major sectors that are driving this is pickup in construction. We're seeing an increase in residential construction activity in particular. Increased airlift into the Federation. The transportation sector, with the return of the cruise ships and cruise passengers in significant numbers. Uptick in loan and advances as more people borrow for construction and other activities. And the public sector with the regularization of step workers and also new hiring in the public sector. Now, for 2023, because the year is not quite finished yet, and moving into 2024, the developments that we're looking at, or the growth that we're looking at, is without downside risk. For example, as Prime Minister would have mentioned, the ongoing war, Russia-Ukraine war, would have had significant impact on our supply chain. Now we have a new war between Israel and Palestine, and we are waiting to see what sort of impact that would have on the international scene, also on our region and on our country. Slower than expected growth in the global economy. For our economy, a lot of what we consume, we import. The tourists from our major destinations, the US, UK, Canada, the activities in those economies, the growth in those economies significantly impact the development and progress also of our country. Adverse weather conditions, we are forever at risk of hurricane, floods, droughts, that these can significantly impact the growth rate going forward, which emphasize the need for us, as the Prime Minister would have indicated, to build resilience. Now, going forward, the 2023, as was established in the 2023 and also into the 2024 budget going forward, the transition towards creating a sustainable small island state. Prime Minister would have mentioned the 7 pillars of focus: food security, and herein, government is pushing forward to invest even further in agriculture, crop and livestock production to boost output. Also provide support for marketing of our output so we can reduce our import bill and basically consume more locally produced agricultural products. The green energy transition, investing more in renewable energy. We have geothermal, Nevis, that has been on the table. Our target is to reduce our dependency on fossil fuel and basically increase our use of renewable energy by 30% by 2025 and 100% by 2030. Economic diversification. It is important for us to diversify our economy. We cannot depend totally on tourism because, as we all know what would have happened in 2020 and 2021, once the cruise ship stops coming, once the plane were not arriving, it would have had a rather significant impact on our economy. So we're looking at the development of the cannabis industry, particularly focusing on research and development. Sustainable industries, implementing strategies that would incorporate the building of climate resilient and gender equity in development of our various industries. The creative economy, providing support for the sustainable growth of the creative arts industry. COVID-19 recovery, as I was presented in the numbers, up to 2022, that the recovery is still ongoing. We are still not back yet to the 2019 or pre-pandemic level. So the focus on establishing a small business development center that would advance entrepreneurship and build small businesses. Social protection. I would have mentioned in one of my previous slides that the government at the time would have spent over $100 million in terms of subsidy to households and to business to basically provide some buffer during that pandemic period. However, these subsidies are not sustainable. So the reform of the social programs are a very important part in terms of moving forward in our development strategy. The upgrade of community centers, health centers, sporting facilities, that is important as part of the post-social protection plan, as well as the construction of a new smart climate hospital. This is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Phipps. At this point, we call on the Financial Secretary, Mrs. Hilary Hazel.
Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Terence Ju, please allow me to adopt the protocol with the exception of hailing up our youths. Hey, good to see you all this morning. I'm very pleased to be here today and sharing this event as the Ministry of Finance has been accustomed to present some ideas and seek input from our public. And this year, we have decided that it is about time that we have these events focus on hearing the voice of our youth. And so, a special welcome to you all. And we look forward to your questions, your ideas, and your thoughts on what you've heard this morning. The Ministry of Finance will bring some basic information about the government's fiscal performance in recent times, explore some issues and opportunities, as well as bring a viewpoint in terms of the key messages and recommendations. In terms of the fiscal performance, you would see that for the past 2 years, the medium term, we have been carrying a wage bill equivalent to 11.4% in 2022, so roughly between 10 to 11%. And we are projected by the end of this year to realize a wage bill at around 10.7% of GDP. In terms of non-discretionary expenditure, we expect that by the end of this year, that would be in the region of 9.2% of GDP. In respect to debt, the government has done a very good job of managing its public sector debt. And so debt service has fallen over the years, And by the end of 2023, we expect to see our debt to GDP ratio falling to as low as 55.4%. If this were to happen, it would be a very remarkable achievement for the government. We would be on record coming after the impact of COVID, where we saw a spike of the debt to GDP ratio reaching as far as 69.1% after achieving the target previously, now going below the target and creating headroom for the government to be able to do some further investment in our transformation agenda. In terms of the approved budget for 2023, we have a little graphic here that spells out where we are expecting money to come from to support government operations this year. We expect that we will collect in the region of about $1 billion. And this would comprise of $111 million from taxes on income, which are primarily corporate income tax, approximately $13 million from property taxes, $100 million from taxes on domestic goods and consumption, $187 million from taxes on international trade and transactions, $582 million from non-tax revenue, and this is primarily coming from the Citizenship by Investment program, and $25 million in grants that we're expecting from our various partners around the world. I would say that based on the performance so far, this has been, most of our revenue heads have been performing creditably and are in the positive, and so we are poised to achieve the fiscal targets for 2023. On the expenditure side, however, we are expecting to have a wage bill in the region of $223 million, which equates to about 33% of government expenditure. This is followed by purchase of goods and services to the tune of $247 million, which is about 25% of total government expenditure. Transfers, I think Mr. Phipps mentioned the subsidies that we have had over the years, and continuing into 2023, we have transfers bringing up about 23% of government expenditure, and in terms of dollar amount, this equates to about $225 million. And on the capital side, we have expended, we are hoping to expend $179 million, which is about 18%. And so part of the discussions that we need to have as a country, and the input we would want from our youth, is this the best mix? Is this the best configuration for achieving our sustainable island state? A viewpoint from the Ministry of Finance would be, maybe if we were to do things differently, we may be able to reduce that big chunk in yellow, which represents transfers. And so once we are in the height of pursuing our sustainable island state agenda, hopefully we will be able to create better paying jobs. More people would be at work at higher salaries. And so we will be actively pursuing an agenda that maybe by the next 2 years or so, when we do this again, we would see a difference in terms of the mix of government expenditure. And we would be advocating for a greater portion for capital investments, because that is where government has the prime opportunity for contributing to our transformation. As we look at the issues and opportunities, I would want to touch briefly on three main areas, which includes maintaining fiscal stability, enhancing economic growth prospects, and building momentum for the sustainable island state agenda. On the issue of maintaining fiscal stability, the government over time has indicated that we will be pursuing activities that would help to strengthen the fiscal framework. And a part of this means that we would need to be more direct in terms of whether or not we would move forward to establish much more stringent fiscal rules. Already we have one that serves as an anchor, and we're all aware of it. The debt to GDP ratio is something that helps to guide the fiscal management of the government. And there are others that, as a nation, as a government, we would need to consider. We also look at a comprehensive review of the tax regime. This work has been started in partnership with our partners at the IMF, and we are hoping that in the near future, certainly during the course of 2024, the Ministry of Finance would lead in some conversations and consultations with the public on reforms for the tax regime. Case in point, you would listen to persons who voice opinions and sometimes frustration about what we pay in terms of duties and taxes for importation of goods and goods in particular. And there is no line that is set in terms of how government's revenue would be configured. We need to have a conversation, because if there's a gap that is created by reducing those taxes and duties, what is the consensus of where that gap would be filled? How are we going to do that? Is this that we are going to reduce government expenditure and so the expectations of the public is that certain goods and services would be provided by ourselves? Or is it that we would find alternatives to that particular tax? Say, for example, increasing taxes on alcohol and sugar, sugary beverages. There's no decision. We would want to hear from you. What are the options that you are willing to support? What is our vision jointly for moving our country forward in a sustainable way? Because a sustainable island state dictates that there is stability in government finances. And so we would have the conversations and we will help to bring conclusion and a decision about how we would want to take our country forward. But remember, as a base, there's no country in the world that can continue to run a successful government without taxes. Let that sink in. And so we will continue to explore the opportunities for also establishing the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which have been spoken about in the past. In terms of recommendations, we would want to put on the table the ideas of government and private sector working together to double our efforts in terms of building resilience in the macroeconomy. And this in particular, we'll be targeting building our resilience in terms of the ability to weather external shocks. We would want to also recommend that we find a way to configure our revenue generating activities so that we would have a much more reduced reliance on CBI inflows. And this is not to say or to downplay the role of CBI inflows, but then we would have a better chance of sustaining and being resilient to threats that may be coming our way in the future as it relates to CBI. And we are all aware that whilst the government is doing all that it can to make sure that we have one of the best and the strongest programs, several of the elements that goes towards making the CBI program one that is flourishing is out of our control. And so with that in our minds, we would want to see CBI inflows playing more of a role in terms of our transformation and not necessarily being relied on for our recurrent operations of the government. Another recommendation would be for us to pay some serious attention on increasing productivity. We cannot be successful in bringing and maintaining solid, higher paying jobs without doing something about the level of the current productivity of our labor force. And so we are strong advocates for making sure that we have enough of the human capital, the right skills mix to be able to attract the type of jobs that we would need to move our country forward. I'm not sure if anyone here thinks that at this current time, we have sufficient of the right skills to make that transition that we speak of. From our viewpoint at the Ministry of Finance, we have identified several areas where we are lagging, and it is not beyond us to target those and remove the gaps that exist. We also look at digital transformation and renewable energy and our need to scale up the use in both the public and private sectors. I think Mr. Phipps mentioned earlier industrial expansion, food and nutrition security, energy and water security, and we would want to also put on the table wealth creation. We would not accept a sustainable island state without moving those families across the Federation who are currently living below the poverty line. We cannot accept the status quo. Whatever our agenda and our strategies are, one of the salient backstopping benchmark that we should hope to achieve is to ensure that wealth is created across the Federation, lifting households, those who are in lower income to middle, middle to higher, and even lower income to higher income. And so I would advise that as a nation, we need to spend some time thinking about how we are going to tackle the issue of creating wealth for our people. And then, in the final analysis, we must redouble our efforts to ensure that our national development plan does not stay on a bookshelf or now as an electronic file, but we work that plan and we make sure that that plan is used so that the Sustainable Island State agenda becomes a reality for all of us. I want to finally end by saying that the government, the key message is that the government's fiscal house is in relatively good order and that there are threats to unraveling that good order. And once we have identified those threats, we should do everything in our power to ensure that that threat does not become a reality to threaten the strength of the fiscal position of the government. We also want to send a key message that the Ministry of Finance, and by extension the government, is here to listen to all of the voices that are present here in this room this morning, as well as those who are joining us via virtual means. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Financial Secretary Mrs. Hilary Hazel, for that presentation. Please welcome Ms. Melissa Henry, our economist from the Ministry of Economic Development and Investment.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa Henry, economist within the Ministry of Economic Development and Investment. Allow me to adopt the protocol set before me and welcome the Prime Minister, members of the Cabinet, all auxiliary staff, and our distinguished guests, especially our youth, who I know took time away from all their assignments to be here this morning. Thank you. So today I'll be discussing the economic development outlook from 2024 to 2030. This is our agenda for this morning. I'll be doing a look of the overall GDP growth in the medium term, the key industries, the National Development Planning Framework, Sustainable Island States and the NDPF, youth intervention, and then brief thanks. So GDP growth 2024 to 2030, what is the trend that we are seeing in the medium term? So in the medium term, which we are describing as 2024 to 2030, Saint Kitts and Nevis is expected to continue its recovery following the COVID-19 pandemic. Real gross domestic product, as is displayed there, the green is the 2019 baseline. So based on forward projections, we can see that by 2023, it will recover up to 96.4% when we compare it to the baseline, and full recovery will be achieved in 2024. And it will increase at an annual rate of 4.3% over the period of 2024 to 2030. So I'm sorry that it's cut off, but I will list it out. So the recovery is expected to be maintained by key areas. They include construction, tourism, transportation, storage and communications, financial services, real estate, renting and business activities, public administration, and wholesale and retail. First, construction. So, what do we see when we look at the construction sector in the medium term? So, recovery in the construction sector by 2024, it will reach 99.1% when we compare it to the 2019 baseline, and full recovery will be expected by 2025. So, this recovery is predicated on anticipated developments in the public and private sector with the implementation of key economic and social infrastructure. This includes housing developments, the building of schools, as well as the road improvement projects, which you have observed around Saint Kitts and Nevis already. Hotels and restaurants, this is also what we refer to as tourism. So likewise in the tourism sector, and this is going to be a trend as you will follow, there's going to be strong recovery in the medium to long term, and based on the forecast, we expect full recovery by 2025, and it is expected that it will increase in the medium term. And we are expecting this recovery based on increases in air arrival. We are expecting this recovery based on increases in visitor arrivals by both air and sea, as we see that travel starts to pick up in the medium term, and this is following the COVID-19, which would have basically restricted a lot of that travel, expansion in airlifts, as well as enhancements to both the air and seaports, as indicated by SCASPA. This will greatly improve the capacity as which we can, that we will receive these people. Transportation, storage, and communications. So similar to what we see in the previous sectors, it is anticipated that by 2024, the sector would have recovered to about 96.8% when we compare it to the baseline, and the sector will achieve full pre-pandemic recovery levels by 2025, further expanding into 2030. And this is based on anticipated growth in air by 8.9%, communications by 4.3%, sea by 4%, and land by 1.6%. And this is why it is important that we ensure that airlift development is advanced so that this outlook that we are expecting can be achieved. Financial services. Interestingly, the financial services was one of the quickest sectors to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can see, in 2020, it would have broke even with the 2019 baseline. However, we don't see that growth surpassing it until 2022 and 2023. And the sector is poised to further expand into the medium term. And this will be based on developments of the banking sector. So as we see developments of mobile applications such as Dcash and other online mobile financial platforms, and as well as improvements in our offshore financial services sector, that will greatly improve our financial services, perhaps even what we have projected there. Real estate, renting, and business activities. So recovery in this sector is in keeping with what we would have previously seen in other sectors. Full recovery is forecasted by 2024, and as productivity in this sector is expected to expand annually by 1%. And this is based on planned public sector and private sector housing initiatives. So as we see developments from not only the government with the planned apartments and housing from the NHC, but as well as the private banking sectors as they build as well. Public administration, so this remains a major player in the economy. It comprises about 9% of GDP. In the medium term, the sector is estimated to grow about 2.8% in 2024 and has a projected growth about 3% onwards. This is attributed to new hiring, so we're expecting more people to be integrated into the government sector, increase in salary, and incremental payments. Labor activities. So the Federation's labor force, as well, one thing I want to point out is that you're not going to see a projection of this specific sector we are dealing with real numbers. So it only goes up to about the half year of 2023. But what we can see right now is that the sector has recovered to about 95.4% of 2019 levels. And based on the trajectory, we can project that it should be fully recovered by the end of this year. And this is predicated on robust recovery forecasted in the economic sectors of the economy. So as we see these sectors start to grow and expand, we are expecting that businesses will start hiring more, and so we are going to see that increase. Wholesale and retail. So it is expected that the wholesale and retail sector will fully recover to 2019 levels by 2024, exhibiting a strong growth over the medium to long term, growing at about 3.6% per annum. I think this is especially hopeful because, as you can see, that big dip that we would have seen following the COVID-19 pandemic, where we saw a lot of closures in our retail stores. So this recovery is extremely hopeful for us. So in summary, the economy of Saint Kitts and Nevis is forecasted to record robust growth over the medium to long term, with notable developments in many of the major sectors. The projected achievements in the economy are predicated on high levels of investment from both private, public, foreign, and domestic that will aid us in implementing the SIS. There are 6 development areas under the NDPF. They include climate resilience, green energy transformations, economic development, human capital development, inclusivity and social protections, institutional strengthening and partnerships. And so what is the link between the NDPF and the Sustainable Island States? Well, as you can see from the graph, they both feed into achieving the one goal of achieving a sustainable island state. And enshrined in the 6 development areas of the NDPF are the SIS pillars, which include food security, water security, energy transitions, sustainable industries, sustainable settlements, circular economies, and social protections. So what investments can we make under the NDPF that will help us to achieve a sustainable island states? Well, under energy, we are looking at investments in geothermal and solar energy, investments to upgrade our electrical institutions that are SCELEC and NEVLEC, and investments in mixed sources of green energy. Under human capital, we are looking to transform our curricula that includes places like TVET and AVEC, which are sometimes left out, to help develop a trajectory of creating green jobs and to support the energy sector. So developing our curricula that will help the students fit into this new environment of what we want to be a sustainable island state. Also, making opportunities available so they have access to overseas educations, and not only overseas educations, but ones that are reliable and also reputable as well. Oh, wrong slide, sorry. Also, reformations to the development bank, so ensuring that you have access to loans and financing so that you can seek out these overseas financing educational opportunities. A focus on aligning the educational curricula, not only in high school through to college, but also ensuring that it is suitable for when you enter the workplace. So ensuring that all of them are aligned so that you are best able to, when you leave school, you are able to get jobs. Economic infrastructure, so this is building climate resilient roads to ensure that as we face tropical storms and hurricanes that are increasing annually, that you are still able to move to and from if you need to ensure access, and so that you're able to move along the island even though we are facing these turbulent storms, which is important. Also, the building of green hospitals and upgrading of our health facilities, expansions and upgrades to our air and seaports, the development of special economic zones. This is especially important because while it was not mentioned here, our manufacturing sector is struggling immensely. So it really is important that we do place a lot of emphasis on putting investments into reinvigorating our manufacturing sector and laying the infrastructure for electric vehicles uptake. So it's important that we don't just go and say we need to import green vehicles, but important that we have the infrastructure that they are usable so that it will cause an impact. Economic development. This will include the diversification of several key sectors. These include tourism, so we want to transform the tourism industry from what it is right now into something different. So we're looking at sports tourism, wellness tourism, green tourism, something that will reinvigorate our tourism sector. Agriculture, a movement away from the old and into the new, so green agriculture and industrial cropping. Manufacturing, of course, so we're looking at the manufacturing of LED chips and the movement towards agro-processing, and the development of our blue and orange economy. For those that are unaware, blue meaning marine resources, orange meaning the entertainment industry. As you know that we are trying to work on creating this creative industry. We have a new ministry for it, so we really are trying to go towards that. So the development and investment outlook presented here is not finite, and as we work towards our goal of becoming a sustainable island state, we will adjust our templates to meet the challenges faced. So youth involvement, what does it mean for you? Or should I say us, because I am also a youth. So consultations like these, ensuring that youth employment is a priority. So what are the biggest problems do we youth perceive as our biggest obstacles for employment, not only in the medium term, but as of right now? So what are our biggest obstacles that we are seeing? What is stopping the youth from seeking gainful employment and just being left at the wayside? Access to education. So what degrees are the most operable and important to you in the current day job market? So it's not just enough to send people off to go and get degrees. It's important that when they come back, these degrees, they can slot in and fit into the current infrastructure in this economy. Offering a more diversified portfolio for employment opportunities. So when they come back, I think it's important that youth have different options. So it's not just to go and sit in an office or what we have traditionally, but how can we increase the options for them, not just in the public sector, but private sector as well. And finally, encouraging youth in entrepreneurship in the green, blue, and orange economy. So as we build up these sectors, as we create ministries for them, as we put in investments, how do we ensure that youths are prioritized? How do we ensure that they have a seat at the table and that they are seen and heard when we develop these things? Let me see if I did a thank you slide. I did not, but I want to say thank you for your time today, and I hope to hear your questions.
I think we can give my fellow colleague here, Ms. Henry, another round of applause for that very good presentation. She's a youth, and she's representing a new ministry that the administration has established, the Ministry of Economic Development and Investment, which will be critical to us transforming to a sustainable island state. So I am not the press secretary, Mrs. Adelcia Connor-Lance, as you can see, but I'll be taking you through the rest of this morning's proceedings. Next, we have a presentation from the Ministry of Environment, Climate Action, and Constituency Empowerment, which will be delivered by the Honorable Dr. Joyelle Clark, my colleague, and she will be presenting virtually. Dr. Clark, please welcome her.
Good day, CABSEC. Thank you very much for making the virtual options available, not just for me, but for the diaspora and for everyone else who can connect and listen to our transformation to a sustainable island state discussion with the youth. Of course, allow me to start by sending greetings to the Honorable Prime Minister and members of Cabinet, but most importantly, at this point in time, the young persons who have joined us today and are ready with their questions. on what a sustainable island state looks like for Saint Kitts and Nevis. So we have heard, I think, three presentations outlining how various ministries, but ministries which are critical to our budgeting process, plan to incorporate the Sustainable Island State agenda in our framework for budgets, in our plans, in the projects that we want to do, and even in our last presentation, something as critical as how do we transition our fossil fuel-based vehicles to EVs. What we're doing right now from the Ministry of Climate Action and the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Environment, Climate Action, and Constituency Empowerment is sharing how the Sustainable Island State vision is linked to becoming a climate resilient nation and also linked to the Sustainable Development Goals, or what we call the SDGs. Now, there are just three clear things that we need to define. For some, you may have wondered, well, what is a sustainable island state? And it's the simplest thing to define. Each word has a definition. Sustainability speaks to long-term goals, what we want future generations to enjoy. When you have your children, what are they going to enjoy? What are we doing now, and how does it affect what happens in the future? And of course, balance. Of course, as an island, we can, yes, use our basic geographical or social studies definition. An island is we're surrounded by water, but in development thinking, we're thinking about SIDS, we're a small island developing state, or we're from the global south, the southern hemisphere, or we are a large ocean state that size is about having this much water surrounding us. And of course, that we are vulnerable tropical countries. And one of our main vulnerabilities being that of the annual hurricane cycles. And of course, as a state, this is Saint Kitts and the island of Nevis, we are a sovereign nation. Twin islands. We are one nation and we're independent. So we are at liberty to exercise for our own selves, because we're independent, what we want to do with our economy and with our country. So far, we have been talking about the Sustainable Island State agenda for about a year. We heard it first in our throne speech back in August 2022. This was presented in the budget last year. We've had many conversations about it when we had Diplomatic Week, where the Ministry of Foreign Affairs invited many ambassadors, guests, and representatives from other countries to St. Kitts. The idea was also presented. Our Prime Minister solidified our decision to transform to a sustainable island state at the United Nations General Assembly this year in New York, and we're having this national consultation. This national consultation is one of many consultations that must happen with the general public if we are to get buy-in and design together what it looks like for St. Kitts and Nevis to become a sustainable island state. As mentioned before, we're linking it with the SDGs. With climate resilience, it means that our country can withstand climate change, and even if there is a climate event like a hurricane, we can respond. We have resiliency. It's like a rubber band that you can stretch. You can stretch it out, give it some pressure, and it just goes back to its normal state after a climate event. This is linked to digital innovation, which is so critical for you as young people and the future that you intend to have in St. Kitts and Nevis. It's all about the digital economy. And these three things coming together will create what for us is the sustainable island state. I'm using this opportunity to remind us of the 17 SDGs. All these goals are tied to the sustainable island state agenda, whether it's no poverty or SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, which is something that's particularly important to the residents of Cayon and Upper Monkey Hill, for example, or clean energy, which everyone in St. Kitts want access to. We want affordable energy and we want cheaper energy. Or life below water, that's really important for the marine resources. How do we protect our marine species? All of these are linked to the Sustainable Island State agenda. Then, of course, how do we achieve climate resilience as a sustainable island state? As presented by the Ministry of Finance, we need the money. And you cannot have money, as our financial secretary said, without taxes. She said that should sink in, and it really did sink in. You need digital innovation and investment, as was presented in the Ministry of Economic Development's position, that all of the transition goals that we have require direct investments. And of course, you need partnerships with people around the environment, and that's where you come in as environmental stewards. And of course, the link between people and finances, as presented by the Ministry of Sustainable Development, the other end of the ministry that I lead, there is a need for social protection and posterity. All of these have to come together for a country to be truly resilient to climate change. So it's not just let's move our people from the coast because hurricane storm surges are going to create bigger waves, or let's plant more mangroves to cut down waves, as you would learn in geography, for example. It's how do we protect everything about our people? How do we protect their lives now, and how do we create better lives for them in the future? So every time we've had an engagement, we get different terms, different things that are important to different groups of Kittitians and Nevisians, whether it's the need for more development, more protection. How do you be more resilient? What are the social issues? What promises can you make us now for the future? Are we talking about sanitation, environmental awareness? So all of these, and of course, wealth creation. It makes no sense to have a sustainable island state if we cannot afford to live in a sustainable island state, right? And that's why wealth generation is so critical. So when we're looking at Saint Kitts and Nevis, the question is, why do we need to transform? Why can't we just stay the same and just survive? Well, if you do nothing, you're not going to survive. And that's really what everything, every document, every indicator, every statistic is saying to us. If we do nothing, we will not have our Saint Kitts and Nevis in 20 years. So we are mapping our exposure. So there are some challenges that we know are common to everyone in Saint Kitts and Nevis, and common to the Eastern Caribbean, common to CARICOM countries, common to the world. Climate events. Our exposure is very high. We're in the tropical belt. The cost of energy. It's fossil fuel, it's carbon-based, and we don't produce oil in Saint Kitts and Nevis, so our exposure is very high. If the price changes globally, we feel it locally. Food insecurity. We don't plant much of what we eat, so our risk here is also very high. Drought and water shortage, it's very high, especially where you live in Saint Kitts and Nevis. And of course, conflict. Last year, it was Ukraine. Presently, it's Israel and Palestine. Next week, it could be someone else. Conflict will be common for the rest of our lives. How do we respond? Of course, COVID-19, it hasn't left, it's here globally, and we have to make sure our economy can respond to COVID-19 or any threat that is similar. And of course, we're a high-income country or we're a developing country. The more money you make in a country, the less likely you are to access official development aid or aid from other countries because you're doing well. But it does not always translate to doing well for every single Kittitian and Nevisian. So we need to transform. The question here, how do we transform? Very simple. We're going to look at what's happening now, our current lives, the realities we live in. We're going to say, are we going to maintain this reality for future generations, or are we going to try to make it even better for future generations? And it does not matter where you live, whether you are resident or non-resident, we are a small, independent island nation, and we're going to do it together. So these are the 7 pillars that have been articulated today. It's about water security, energy security, food security, sustainable industry, sustainable settlements, the circular economy, and social protection. Now, this is not a complete picture. Once we have more consultations, you are going to say to us, why don't you consider this? Can we add this? Can we change industry to this? And we're going to use experts who are going to engage with you continuously, not just the youth demographic, but other stakeholders to really define what are the key pillars of transformation for our islands. The SDG aspirations have to be smart. And we have taken from those 17 SDGs and combined them with our 7 pillars and our desire to be a climate resilient state to push for economic stability, to push for streamlining social services and addressing the number of people who live below the poverty line, to look towards eliminating water shortages and ensuring that we can mitigate drought impacts. What can we do to avoid this? Also, renewable energy, energy affordability, and elimination of fossil fuel use. And finally, in being smart, it's sufficient, affordable, and resilient housing. Everybody has to live somewhere. These are some of the key indicators if we want to become a sustainable island state. They're not conclusive, we can all add to them. And of course, if you think about the 3 things that matter most to people, it's water, energy, food, your basic survival needs. And this, what we call the nexus of development for Saint Kitts and Nevis, focuses on green energy, food security, and water security. So when you're asking questions, you can think of how do these 3 things come to play in the Sustainable Island State agenda. And just as an example, when you're thinking of water security, it's are we going to power our desal plants through renewable energy? How are we protecting the aquifer? Do we do additional drilling? What are the cost implications and how can ministries work together? Similarly, for energy, it's a geothermal partnership between Saint Kitts and Nevis for one grid, as our Minister of Energy has said from day one, one grid, one nation, and it is possible because we are small. When it comes to green villages and food security, our Minister of Agriculture has committed Saint Kitts and Nevis to 25% reduction in food imports by 2025. It means each of you have to play a part in making sure that we can eat what we grow and we can plant the food we need, not just in our farm, but in a community farm or in our backyards if we're going to meet this 25 by 2025 agenda. And of course, for resilient and regenerative tourism. It goes far beyond sun, sea, and sand, but it's more inclusive, more people-centered, about cultural restoration. And I always have to pause here and say, many of us forget that climate change also means a loss of culture, a loss of history, a loss of biodiversity, a loss of traditional fruits that we are not going to see anymore because the climate is changing. So we're not just trying to protect our coastlines, build stronger homes, but we're trying to preserve history and culture as part of our Sustainable Island State mission. And of course, very important, where are we going to live? We want smart cities and we want smart urban settlements. Yes, some people think a smart home has to talk to you, but a smart home has to also be able to respond to a change in climate. What if you can just have a home where when you step into the room, the light turns on and when you leave, it turns off. So even if you forget to turn the lights off, the house does it for you and it conserves energy. You have to tell us what you think sustainable settlements and sustainable homes look like for your future. Of course, as I close, the country level partnerships, we are looking at this year's budget to be the signaling point of where we need to go as a sustainable island state. We need projects, and we don't just need projects from the government. In your school projects, in your SBAs, you have to design for us what you think a sustainable island state can look like. And these projects that you share with your teachers can be shared with the Minister of Education and can become part of the project development that we're doing in the various ministries. And what's our goal? 2040. The Prime Minister outlined this in the Independence Parliamentary debate that by 2040, our country must look different. So finally, if we have worked together to work on energy security, one grid through geothermal, food security, 20 by 25, banning single-use plastics, waste to energy in the landfill, smart, affordable homes, water security, tourism, circular manufacturing, no waste, good governance, social protection, reduction of NCDs, non-communicable diseases, we would have a society and an economy that is sustainable, that can respond to all our needs and has gender-sensitive planning and mainstreaming at its core. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
We're really trying to achieve here. So thank you very much again, Dr. Clark. Before we go into our next agenda item, which is really where we interact with everyone, just a point to note that we do have out in the foyer a liquid break. So if persons need tea, coffee, water, juices, you can indulge there. But we'll go right into what we are calling Inquire and Interact. This segment is for the audience to ask any questions, give any comments, share any views. We'll be taking those comments, views, and questions from the floor, as well as those persons who are on the Zoom platform online. So at this point, we welcome your questions. If you are near mic in the room, you press the button to speak into the mic. If not, you can get close to one. And persons who are online on Zoom, use the raise hand feature so that we can identify you and call on you when ready. So at this time, I open the floor for questions. You can, in here, you can raise your hands as well, just so that we can see, and then you can proceed.
Good morning, everybody. Pat Walters from the Cable. Yes. From an employer's perspective, and I'm speaking to the youth here and the Minister for Education, we'd be very interested in the curriculum changing so that people entering the workforce will enter with skills of data manipulation, management, being able to use AI to give us some kind of direction to what we do with our customer base, what they're doing, how we can reach out to them. So I'd like to know if there is going to be anything in the curriculum changes that speaks directly to coding, programming, data manipulation, and management. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walters, for that question. Dr. Henry? You want to?
Oh, yeah, PS.
Oh, the PS?
PS.
PS. Oh, PS. PS, please stand up.
Yes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I thank you. Thank you to my neighbor for that question. As it stands now, I think most persons know that over the past couple of years, we've been working on our enhanced curriculum. Part of that is ICT integration. And so we are in the process of getting someone who specializes in that in order for us to infuse our curriculum as it is with aspects of it, but to make sure that we have a program set out where students from primary level to high school can have the necessary skill sets. When we talk about technical and vocational education, we are looking at infusing that area with AI exposure to AI, and virtual reality. So those are some of the things that are on the table and that we are working at. So yes, it's in the work. And we are trying to ensure that our students are ready for the world of work. We realize that persons come out with multiple subjects, but when they go into the workforce, they don't have the skills necessary to perform. And so that is something that we are challenged with, but we're making sure that the experience within education is such that when they leave our educational institutions, they can function, they can work, they can become productive citizens. So in short, yes, we are working on it.
Thank you very much. Is there any other intervention? Anyone else?
Okay, good day. Good afternoon to everyone. First question.
Wait, sorry, can you just say your name maybe and the...
Oh, sorry. My name is
school?
Collins.
School?
Bath High School.
Thank you.
I'll be just how much here. So, the Ministry of Finance mentioned the need for decreasing the enrollment of the citizenship but investment program, even though it is one of the highest non-tax income generators. So the question is, what would be some of the negative impacts of the CBI program?
You said you had two questions?
What are the fields that the nation lacks? Fields that we need to improve on to strengthen and to increase the sustainability of the island state. And then I have one suggestion. Regarding the water problem, I think the federation the government should invest into the conversion of salt water to fresh water. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Who's speaking now?
Mike is here.
So you want to go first?
So we got increase.
Good morning, everyone. One or two represent on behalf of cooperatives. I have a few questions. Some of them are actually might be trivial and some of
Come to a mic.
Speak to them into the mic, please.
Who's the moderator?
Yeah.
Okay. So call.
Yeah.
Good morning, can everyone hear me? One or two currently representing on behalf of cooperatives. I have some questions. Some of them are trivial and some of them might be a little more in depth.
I can't hear. Can't hear.
Speaking to the mic is coming.
Yeah. So my first question would have been, what is the expected cause of the reduction of the GDP and the range from different speakers? I didn't really keep track of who made note of each, so I hope someone else, who said each, so I hope someone else would have recalled. But that is my first question. My second would be, what is the transfers in approved budget chart? It was referenced in the yellow, but I don't think it was defined. So could someone tell me what it
I'm not hearing you at all.
what are some threats that to the fiscal soundness of the government? Because I recall someone outlining that there are a few, but there are some we need to be mindful of.
I'm not hearing any question.
Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning again. For the sake of anyone who might not have heard, the question is, what is the expected cost? What is the expected cause of the reduction? What is the expected cause of the reduction of debt to GDP? What is transfers in the approved budget charts? What are the threats, or some of the threats to the fiscal soundness of the government? And what is meant by industrial cropping when we outline it in agriculture?
Industrial.
Yeah, is it more of a monoculture, or is it just being more economically sound with our agricultural productions? And coming from an agricultural background also, I would like to make an input on the water. I know the Prime Minister would have outlined or announced that there was a new well being found in Kenya with a significant amount of water. In addition to that, I think we should nationally find a way to retain our water, all this runoff that comes from the rains, down the roads, all these dirt roads that get washed every time somebody have fixed them. Maybe we need to collaborate all the ministries that are responsible for road maintenance, development, all of that thing, and really sit down and say, well, bigger heads, smaller heads, persons on the ground, this is how we would like roads to be developed and maintained so that they catch water, they reduce erosion, they are functional and they're durable. I know it's not an overnight fix, but I think it's practical, both for recharging aquifers, whether they're in use or they are not. It will help with all the vegetation, maintaining our consistent vegetation on the land to reduce erosion. It will play a significant role. That's all for now.
Okay, just before we take some more questions, to address the questions from the young man from Bastia High, I would call on, we have our head of the Citizenship and Investment Unit to answer his first question, and then followed by our financial secretary who will answer his second question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cabinet Secretary. I'm not sure I understood what the young man meant by negative impact of CBI. I know he addressed this question to the financial secretary, and so I was wondering if what exactly he meant by negative impact, because from my perspective, from my point of view, there really isn't any negative impact of CBI unless it is run in an uncontrolled way that is not to the benefit of the country and to the people. So CBI is a positive part of our economic development. And in looking at the 7 pillars that were outlined earlier, food security, green energy, economic diversification, sustainable economy, creative economy, and social protection, reforms and upgrade of sports and community and health facilities. CBI is involved in all of that. CBI is all around you. If you want to know what CBI has been doing and is doing, you only have to look all around you. Right here in this area, almost everything you see is as a result of CBI, right here in the Frigate Bay area. And so CBI is very, very important. It's responsible for about 35% of GDP. And it's something that we should preserve and embrace, because it is very, very important to the economy, to this country, and to everyone. It was interesting to hear the young man at the back speak about water management, because it came to mind that a few years ago, water management was also a CBI project under the Agricultural Resource Management Project that was supposed to do just what he's talking about, to prevent water from just running off whenever you have heavy rainfalls and running into the sea and that sort of thing. All of that was part of the Agricultural Resource Management Project. I can go on and on, but I don't think I have unlimited time here to talk about CBI, because I know CBI is a very hot button topic for those who don't fully understand what it is all about. But just to tell you, CBI, citizenship by investment, it's not, at least from this administration's point of view, we are not in the business of selling passports. That's not what we are about. It is citizenship by investment. In other words, this administration's approach is that you must invest in order to have the privilege, the honor of citizenship of this great country. So investment is what it is all about. That is the focus of the program. The focus of the program is investment. So, as you know, we have made some changes in the program recently, and all of that is in keeping with the new direction of the program. That is away from what has been happening in the recent past, just a passport selling scheme, and to focus on investment in the country for our people and for the general development of the country. And we also want to encourage our local people to take advantage of the options that are available under the CBI regulations. Citizenship by investment and all that it entails is not just for foreigners to come in and make some money. We want to see our own people taking advantage of the CBI program and helping to develop themselves and helping to develop the economy. So, young people, that does not leave you out. I'm sure that many of you have ideas that can well fall under the Citizenship by Investment program, and we would be very happy to hear them.
I'll turn over to the Financial Secretary to answer the other question the young man had.
Yes, thank you to both the student from last time and the work from cooperatives for the comments and questions. In relation to the question from the student from the Bastia High School, I understand it to be asking what are some of the areas that we're seeing for improvements. And several of them were mentioned throughout the various presentations, so I will just touch on a few. And they include skills development. They include issues related to our goal of transitioning from the extensive use of fossil fuel to a better mix of renewable energy sources, whether it be wind, solar, or geothermal. We also have areas to improve in terms of securing our food security, food and nutritional security, as well as our need to ensure that we have a better use of technology in the operations, both in the private and public sectors. And so those are the areas where we are seeing, there are several others, but those are what I would want to highlight, and just to refresh some of the areas that were already indicated during the presentations earlier. In terms of the questions from the cooperatives representative, what is the cause of the change in the debt to GDP ratio? And there are two main things. One has to do with the rate at which the public sector is contracting debt. There are, over time, less of an active pursuit of financing for development via contracting debt. And in the instances where they have been debt contracted, the terms of those debt instruments has been very vigorously negotiated. And so the government has had a debt management strategy in place for some time. You can also find, I think, a copy of that strategy on the Ministry of Finance's website. And we have as well, it's something that we update regularly. And then we also have to look at growth in the economy. That plays a very important role in determining the debt to GDP ratio. Transfers. There was a question about transfers and what we meant by that. This is simply the accounting for resources spent by the government in support of many of its social programs, which includes the Poverty Alleviation Program, the PAP, which is affectionately called, the STEP program, the Peace Now Elevate program, now renamed, restyled as the Elevate program, and the various social services support, like the welfare support programs that you would get at the Ministry of Social Development, accounts for what we call transfers. There's also included in this is the resources we may pass to institutions like SCELEC, the electricity company, to help support the subsidies, the large subsidies that government continues to sponsor on behalf of the population for use of electricity. And so that you have not seen the electricity rates being moving upwards. It's not that it's not costing SCELEC more money to operate the plant and produce electricity, but rather that government is bearing a subsidy. We also have subsidies being given for cooking gas, LPG, and that is something that has continued into 2023. And so households are not feeling that increased costs, but someone is bearing it, and currently it is the government. The threats to fiscal soundness, I think there was a question about what are some of the threats we see to fiscal soundness. And they can range from several things, including the uncontrolled expenditure by the government, and low or negative growth can affect that, because once the economy is not in a state where it is growing, then we do not have the business being generated, and so certain taxes we will not be able to collect tax revenues. Once there isn't growth in the economy as well, you would not see as much, say, imports, so that the performance of the revenue on all tax items would suffer. And so that would be a threat to the soundness of the fiscal situation of the government. I'll stay there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hazel. I will turn over to Ms. Henry to answer one of the questions, and then I will ask, following immediately after that, the PS of Public Infrastructure to also address the question on water. I think a question was raised about desalination, to address that quickly as well. Thanks.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Speak. Speak.
Hi.
Put it closer.
It's not working.
Tap it.
Hello? Hi, good morning. So I'll be answering the young man's questions regarding investments in agriculture and whether we were looking at monoculture or something different. So currently we're looking at two options, which are agro-processing as well as commercial crop development. On the agro-processing, we're looking at the cannabis industry. So we know that there's a market for items that have in THC and CBD, which are extracts from the cannabis plant, and how we can include those items probably for export or even local use as well. The agro-processing of juices and jams, or even entry into the beauty industry. So how do we use our native plants to include in probably face creams or whatever it is? Skipper is looking at things like that. For commercial use, we are looking at investments in avocado production as well as castor oil. I think for that one, our main issue would be water scarcity, because what we would have found from the research is that plants, for example, like avocados, require vast amounts of water to be productive. So how do we balance wanting like a robust industry like agriculture, and how do we balance it out with the issues that we have like water scarcity? I think that would be, overcoming those issues will be a big advancement in basically having a pronounced or profound agricultural sector.
Thank you very much. Of course, we want to commend the young gentleman who would have asked the question as it relates to wastewater management and the whole idea of the desalination. I want to begin by saying that I think that the Federation needs to understand that things are not the way it used to be. We have now found ourselves in a very serious situation where, most importantly, we need to begin to address the seriousness of using our water wisely. I say that because a few months ago, I had a family member visiting from overseas, and the individual was in the shower bathing for an extended period of time. And so I would have said to her, you have to turn off the water because things are not the way it used to be. And she said, but as far as I know, many years I've been coming to Saint Kitts, and Saint Kitts has never been without water. And so I say that we recognize that times are changing because of climate change and all of the other factors. And so it is important for us to begin to use our water wisely. As it relates to wastewater management, the ministry has begun to look at that. We recognize that, yes, we do have, when it rains, we have a lot of runoff. We don't know how much water it is, really. We don't know if it's just a significant amount, because it may look like a lot, really. But in terms of knowing how much, we recognize that there is a need to do some kind of study. Additionally, as it relates to desalination, we do not have the pure, clean water that we once had over the years. We realize that now we have had to find ourselves in the whole idea of desalination. We are fortunate enough, however, in the fact that we have had the UAE government that has sponsored in recent time, and that will be coming on very soon, a small plant that we hope to erect sometime soon. But the government has given the commitment, of course, to move in the direction of desalination. We understand the cries of many communities. It was just this morning, particularly, a youngster from Sadler's called, and he said, Mr. Lloyd, why is it that I don't have water for 2 days? And we had so many rainfall over the past few days. But as I would have indicated, that it is not what it used to be, and so the desalination is a project that the ministry, of course, is moving vigorously, to pursue, and that is one of the capital projects that we have put before finance. That is one of the things that we are going to lobby with finance next week or whenever we meet. And so I hope that, that the FinSec, of course, would listen to us and understand definitely the need to support the whole idea of moving forward. Thank you so much for that question.
Thank you very much. Yes, Lloyd. We have 2 questions online that they've been waiting for answers for, so I'll read those quickly and then go back to the floor. So there's one that says, Global Factor in their 2023 report notes the following barriers as it pertains to climate financing. 1, lack of clear and supportive policies that create an enabling environment for businesses, organizations, and communities to access funding and engage in activities aimed at mitigating and adapting to the impacts of climate change. And 2, the deficiency in policy incentives to mobilize climate finance resources, the scarcity of public financing and policy de-risking mechanisms create substantial obstacles for the private sector endeavoring to take part in climate-conscious undertakings. And the question is, are there any specific policies to come online to address this issue? And the second question from another person, how soon do we intend to take mandatory steps towards the elimination of single-use plastics, as the optional way does not appear to be far-reaching? So I will ask the PS in the Ministry of Environment et al. To answer those 2 questions, and then we'll go back to the floor.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the questions. I'll start with the simplest one to answer. The plastic ban has been tabled before Cabinet already, so we are well on our way to undertaking this initiative. It will be a 3-phase approach, which will be communicated to the public. And the first phase should be undertaken prior to the end of this year. And the second and third phase would be completed by the end of 2024. So those are our plans for plastic banning. With regard to the first question in terms of the specific policies to come online to address these issues of the enabling environment for businesses, now Saint Kitts and Nevis approved its revised nationally determined contributions in October of 2021. This is our overarching policy for climate adaptation. So what that means for us is that the NDCs has an accompanying financing strategy. We have since October 2021 costed our nationally determined contributions implementation plan. So there's a strategy. It's quite complex. And so the reason why we have not moved forward is because we have been undertaking a number of consultations, acquiring the expert advice in order to move this complex plan forward. For 2024, interestingly, the Department of Constituency Empowerment is housed within the Ministry of Environment, Climate Action, and Constituency Empowerment. That is not by happenstance, that is intentional. And so for 2024, we are investing in local governance, and that means that we are focusing on SDG acceleration. All of these things are covered on the SDGs. And so we will be able to create grant programs for businesses, greening businesses. Those are our plans. We will be able to have communities, local governance structures created in communities. The constituency empowerment officers are already deployed in communities and are on the ground. And so for 2024 going forward, we are having this enabling environment built for you to access climate financing.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. Yes, I have two from the floor. I'll start with Ms. Brown, and then there's another student down there.
Good afternoon, everyone. Desi Brown, creative enterprise entrepreneur. I hope that my contribution isn't a little lengthy. I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible.
Thank you for that.
Yes. Notably missing from the data presented today would be information reflecting creative entities and services, an area I hope that we can see some improvement on by prioritizing the data collection in our statistics department to help with information like that. But in the absence of that, I want to use the data from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, popularly known as UNCTAD, published a report in 2022, the Creative Economy Report, which looked into 33 countries, which they found that the creative economy has become a sector of growing social, political, and economic importance. Now, they would have identified that international trade in creative goods and services generates increasing revenues for countries, but creative services exports vastly exceed those of creative goods, demonstrating that $524 million in 2020 would have been generated from the exports of creative goods, and in creative services, a massive $1.1 trillion. And the data would have also represented the information during a challenging period. So the report was done and it showed resilience during the COVID-19 pandemic and other services sectors. It also said that South-to-South trade with most of us down below, can be important for developing economies to create new trade opportunities and diversify exports. It also stated that despite all of the challenges that we would have been experiencing in this significant decade, like COVID-19, the looming climate change and environmental crisis, geopolitical tensions, and major cost of living crisis, The creative economy remains one of the most critical sectors for sustainable development, which is a conversation that we're having here today. I would really like to use the opportunity to highlight how in practice, with some of the basic suggestions that we can try to move towards so that we can achieve some of these goals. Mainly, again, because there's an absence of that we're talking about sustainable industries and how creative entrepreneurs can utilize, but without some of the efforts that I'm going to mention here, I don't think we're going to be able to achieve some of those goals outlined for the next year and few years. So I want to look at financing. Considering that the government has an interest in 2 major lending institutions, there is a need to align this agenda with the funding or lending criteria for these institutions, and I'll expand on that idea. So access to financing is generally one of the major issues, and I acknowledge that there are tremendous efforts by the Small Business Development Unit and the recent publication of the Indian Partnership of Grant helping with the procurement of machinery in specific areas like agro-processing and light manufacturing. However, there is a demand for greater financing by creative entrepreneurs and creatives in general, and for us to achieve our service and growth expansion forecasts. So we have special needs in equipment, special needs in spacing, special needs in training. And recently at a Women in Entrepreneurship Forum that I attended, hosted by the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Senator Phipps was there as well, there was a mention of a lack of evolution in banking. So where there is mainly support given to the tangible production of goods, basically in industries. So you have an issue where we're currently now expanding or shifting into wellness and creativity, and some of these, it's becoming a major aspect of our lives, and our niche areas, which are crucial to the expansion of other traditional industries. And you find that practicing professionals like myself, I am 7-8 years now, a creative entrepreneur, and you have others who are unable to acquire financing from institutions, mainly because we are not able to tangibly demonstrate, or we don't have a tangible good that you can forecast, right? We do have services, and I'm asking that we align some of the requests that you have of us, or your agenda with your lending institutions to assist. Also in not just aligning, but also in expanding the criteria so that we're able to demonstrate, because you have the same old archaic requests where you want bank statements, but our bank statements are going to demonstrate that we're cash strapped, mainly because there's a slow inflow of cash, and it's really difficult to turn over and expand a business and have an impact when you're waiting to be paid, right? So we would need that sort of capital. And I am saying that because I have never been able to successfully acquire a loan, no matter I've been surviving and thriving in the creative industry for 8 years, to be able to move forward I have employees and so forth, so I've been able to do that. But there's more that we can do, and we're unable to do within the space because we're not able to have access to that kind of financing. And I'm not the only one. We want to be able to demonstrate how our services benefit our clients. You can have further conversations with loyal clientele. We can demonstrate and we can basically demonstrate the inflow. So with invoices, with payments received and all of this, I would like to see that. So intangible services need to be widely considered for financing. That is the summary of that area. My final two, which are shorter than the first, following suit with the expansion of, I would really love for us to consider expanding in a broader perspective, because the college did it and I was invited to speak on entrepreneurship as a result, but STEAM. Instead of just STEM, we also need to consider arts for A, and E, entrepreneurship. And not just saying it because it has a really good ring, right? We're talking about entrepreneurship and no creative entrepreneurship as a huge opportunity for us to be able to create a sustainable island state. And there aren't many scholarships available. So we have national scholarships, but how about starting with 1 or 2 next year trying to, on the next 2 years, to mobilize that kind of support to be able to get certificate programs through graduate programs to allow individuals to expand their skill sets, knowledge. Because when you go and you ask to get a business license for your creative entity, they're asking for your qualifications. And many of us aren't, and they are now. Before, I would have studied international relations as my major and opted not to do dance and do more programs in dance while at school to be able to accelerate my creative excellence in that area. There are now opportunities at the UE school where you have degrees for carnival stuff. You have degrees at UE in Barbados, and Jamaica has CARIMAC as well, which is not limited to just traditional or what we would consider some of the creative fields, but you have media and so forth. And I think these are partnerships we need to forge and look forward to creating so that we can be able to expand that acronym STEAM and really be serious about creating an island state that is sustainable using creative entities. And the final one is creating mandatory creative clubs in school. So that would be co-curricular instead of calling it extracurricular. And I'm putting somewhat like, what would it be, points, something that goes towards the overall graduating final of a primary school student or a high school student, looking at stuff like photography clubs, because ultimately these things are no longer just hobbies, and they can be monetized, and they can create greater employment and reduce the dependency of individuals on becoming employed by others and even through the government system. So I think those are my contributions. I'm hoping that I've tried to cover as much as I can within the time.
Thank you very much.
Right. If you allow me, Desi, I think your presentation was excellent. And to say very quickly, I didn't intend to speak, but I'm looking to see who could have integrated all of this. And our Minister for Small Business and Creative Economy, he's not here at this point in time. And just to give a backdrop, I see that the PS is here. But I want to bring to your attention, it is no accident at all that we have brought small business, creative economy, which includes sports and other things, under one ministry. Because we want to link the new economy, the creative economy, to small business so that there can be room for these type of innovations to be treated as small businesses and be given the consideration spoke about. For example, financing. They will be able to access the financing. You spoke about the grant program that we have. Creatives can actually apply for that grant. These are non-traditional businesses because we recognize the importance. That is why we created a whole ministry to deal with it, not just something that is embedded in something else, but that it is highlighted because we know it is part of the future development of the economies of the world. So the other thing is we have spoken with Central Bank, the countries in the OECS, and Central Bank has set up a partial loan guarantee, credit guarantee, thank you, FS. And the reason for that, why we asked them to do that, is for somebody who is a creative who is going to go in with an idea that is a fresh idea, new idea. They don't have the bank balances you are speaking about, or the traditional information that is required to have a loan. This guarantee would say to, let's say, National Bank, if they were to apply for it. If you give this creative $50,000 to $100,000 to start that new type of business, it is at no risk to the National Bank because the loan is backed by the Central Bank. And so you will see that coming on stream very, very soon. The Small Business Ministry will be officially launched on Monday, this Monday. And that program that I'm speaking about with respect to the loan that is being backed by the Central Bank will be launched also soon so that we can mesh both of them. So we are addressing that issue. Another thing with the Afrixim Bank, one of the things we are pushing forward with them is the orange economy, to provide these type of loans and financial services to persons in the creative space so that they can have an opportunity to build out their businesses. So we have done that deliberately, and your observation are quite correct with respect to that. So I just wanted to answer that part to let you know that the small business creative economy are under one heading, and they are going to be given the opportunity to flourish and develop based on how we are going to set up financial access so that this part of the economy can really flourish. And to say the last thing, it was predicted maybe about a decade or two ago by a leading scientist that human beings will reach the point where they will develop enough technology to have access to energy, water, and so forth. We're seeing AI, and soon might see quantum computers, which will propel that. However, he has predicted it. And he said the economy of the world will become heavily dependent on new ideas and the creatives. So what you are seeing in the numbers is something that was scientifically predicted, and we are moving ahead by creating a whole ministry to deal with it and the financing that is important to push it forward. So I recognize your observation, which is quite accurate. And so we are doing our part, and we'll do more to build out this creative economy. So our young people will have the opportunity to do it. So when you show up with a new idea, people should not tell you, this is a weird idea or this idea wouldn't work. As a matter of fact, I want to hear some of those weird ideas today, if you have them, so that we can build them and grow them. We need weird ideas to move the country forward. Of course, I put weird in inverted commas, but you're talking about something that we have not thought about, an idea that you think can work. So we are open to it. I would say yesterday, a gentleman came to me to my office. He developed a board game. I've never seen a board game developed by a Kittitian yet. And his board game makes sense. By the time you finish the board game, you know everything about Saint Kitts. What if you get those board games and you put them there and you sell them? I could not believe that somebody is saying, he said, I can't get money to do it. I just need to get $80,000 to build out these games and sell them. So why can't we have a board game from Saint Kitts and Nevis? And then he come to somebody who is doing IT at CFBC, and you show him how to make it into an electronic form so that he can sell it across the internet for people who want to learn about Saint Kitts and Nevis can buy the game all over the world. The world have what, 8+ billion people? You only need a very small percentage to be interested in Saint Kitts to buy that board game, and that can translate into millions. So he is asking, I am in this creative space. I can't go to a bank and get money. How can I get financing to launch the first board game from Saint Kitts and Nevis? And here I was paying the board game, and the board game makes sense to me. At least I will buy one. So I told him I'm going to put him on to have access to the financing from the National Bank once they get their facility, because he would qualify based on how it is set up, is to have those new ideas be financed. That's a whole new space. You can imagine people building board games here, the electronic people doing it, writing codes and so forth. He can create a new type of product from Saint Kitts and Nevis, a board game that teaches you about the history and people of Saint Kitts and Nevis. So I accept your point strongly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I believe the PS in the creative economy wanted to just make a small intervention.
I'm actually the PS for small
business and entrepreneurship.
Good morning, all. I first want to address the youth because it was quite fitting to have them a part of this forum as we speak about projections for 2030 and 2040, and they're the ones, if not all of them, would be in the working force by that and would be contributing to our economic development and growth. So in my capacity of permanent secretary within the ministry, one of the critical areas we realize is the youth development, and to create a more entrepreneurial culture. And you would see within the next year, 2024, we will try to collaborate with the youth department and Ministry of Education to see how we could, introduce programs that would benefit the youths within the schools in terms of creating that entrepreneurial culture, because they are the ones who would be establishing businesses within the next 10, 15, 20 years. And we have to make sure that we create a more thriving sector, increasing the doing business, creating that one-stop shop that would help benefit that sector. Also, I don't know if PS Sider would want to talk about the creative aspect of it. But when it comes to the Ministry of Small Business, Ms. Brown would have mentioned access to finance, and access to finance does not just come from government, but we would have international funding agencies like the OAS, the Taiwanese, the GGI, which is the Green Growth Institute, that would have programs to provide access to finance for our small business persons. Just yesterday, we put out the information in relation to not just finance, but the same one that was mentioned in terms of the equipments, providing equipments for the entrepreneurs. But we also see grants being offered to green businesses. And when I speak about access to finance, we been negotiating or collaborating with some of our financial institutions, in particularly National Bank, where we could see birth of interest-free loan for our small businesses. We are actually tabling that discussion right now as we speak. So I don't have a deadline yet of when that would be available for our small business persons, and that is something that the creatives can benefit from. But within the discussions with the bank, the financial institutions, I know Ms. Brown would have mentioned they don't have like the financial statements and stuff like that to guarantee the bank that these are the monies that they make at the end of the day. But we see birth to initiatives like Dcash and some of those technological advancements where you can now have your clients pay via those platforms, and they would generate like a history for these businesses so that you could use that information for the banks so that you could be considered more bankable, right? So the problem is not the access to finance. The problem is creating more bankable businesses so that the banks are willing to lend these businesses, because at the end of the day, they have to guarantee that if they lend $5, whether it's interest-free or at a reduced rate, they are able to regain that $5 to make that funding available for new businesses that are upcoming. So that is, and we at the ministry are working tirelessly when it comes to finding ways and programs to identify, to eliminate the access to finance challenges that the businesses are facing. And we also work heavily on training and development for our entrepreneurs, because providing finance without training is a recipe for disaster, because you have to guarantee that once you provide the finance, that the businesses are going to use these finance for the growth and development of within the sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I had...
There's a student at the front.
Yeah.
Good morning.
One second. Sorry. Yeah. Just get the young lady who was there first from, I think, Bastia High, and then I'll have you right after.
Good morning. My name is Brenna Paul, and I attend the Keon High School.
Keon High.
Yeah. Firstly, I would like to thank everybody, on the panel, for giving the youth this opportunity to speak up. My original question was, you spoke on ways to increase sustainability, but you did not say how you would incorporate the youth at the secondary level into these ways. But the young lady that was speaking over there, I think she is the PS of small business. She sort of answered my questions, so I was looking to see if anybody else from other sectors would have an answer to the question.
Just repeat the question.
You spoke about ways to increase sustainability, but you did not say how you would incorporate the youths at the secondary level into these ways. So I was wondering what ways you would incorporate the youths into these plans, since awareness and strategy is important to engage the young people.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Jahi Mwana. I'm 18 years old, and I'm a part of the CFBC College right? Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. When it comes to all the economic stuff, I can't relate to that. Yes, I do economics in high school, but when I hit college, all of that went out my head, right? So, I only could relate as a student. As a student, I know that when it comes to the country, we need to feel appreciated and feel like we are a part of a movement. Because when it comes to coming back to Saint Kitts after you study and all these things, you would see most people say, no, me want to come back. Let me just stay out, let me go make my money. When I come vacation, I got my money because the currency higher out there, right? No, you will see countries like Singapore where they don't have any resources. You see them, they barely have anything to say they're going to sell, just like Saint Kitts. We're in a dire state. With all these wars and all these things going on in the world, we can't control that, but we only control how we could invest in we people. So, when it comes to these things, I'm feeling like, okay, we empowered. Investing in the people matter, because even look at people like Byron Messiah or people out of the country, they had to invest in themselves. The country never invest in them, and only when they get big and they explode, we want to come and claim them as we own, and we say, oh yes, make poster them, and nothing wrong with that. But we have to invest in them first, because that's the only way they're going to come back and say, I want to invest in my country, I want to live here, I want to make everybody uplift each other, right? And it's building a culture of change in the country. When you invest in people, people will start to have gratitude for you. They will feel like they're ready to die for you. Just saying. And you do that, we all gonna feel a change in the country. It's changing with mindset. Nothing wrong if you give out $1,000, everybody like handouts, right? But when you're able to say, okay, instead of doing that, you gotta work for what you want. No matter what, you gotta go study, I gonna invest for I to go study. If I want it, I could do it. But if I ain't doing nothing, I ain't getting no money from me, right? So when you make that a priority and we invest in the people like that, it's gonna get a lot of change. Because these people gonna go out and say, okay, I could do the same thing too. I could go study economics. I could go study a doctor, and it's because the government give me that. And because the government give me that, I'm gonna come back and be a doctor for the government or work in the hospitals because I have that gratitude. Of course, you're gonna have people who ain't care and be the outliers and say, oh, make what they give me, I'm doing what I want. But you can't work like that. You have to rely on faith and love for your people. For no matter what they do to you, you still try and help them. So thank you.
Thank you. Can I take, did I see somebody else on that side? Yes.
Good day, everyone. My name is Akwanja Robinson, a second-year law student at the CFBC. And one of the issues we face as a small island developing state, as mentioned by our Honorable Prime Minister, is the influx of sargassum blooms. And I would just like to know, what are the strategies in place to effectively mitigate this challenge? And more intriguingly, do we envision harnessing this adversity as an avenue to enhance and diversify our tourism industry?
Let me ask a question on that one while we answer the others. There are a lot of science students at CFBC, those who are studying environment. I would like to hear from them with this sargassum, which is a national issue, how we can deal with it. And you think we can have a project at CFBC that can be geared towards assisting the government and the people of Saint Kitts and Nevis to deal with it? I think that can be an innovative move. So the environmental area, the science area, those who are in that space can help. The reason why I say it, there was a and technology, there was a young man from, I think it's St. Lucia, who sought to do a project, and what else can you do with this orgasm? He started to develop, maybe it can be used for energy or something else, but he did that, and I think he was a college student as well, probably in high school. So I'm asking the college students, while you ask that, I agree, it's a good question, but I would like to hear some answers from the college students themselves, because I think you all might have the answers if you all put your mind to it. And then the second one with the young man who was there, and some others would answer in depth as well. I want you all to know that the fact that you are here is because we value you. This is the first time we are bringing you at the forefront to look at the budget, look at where Saint Kitts and Nevis is heading, and to have your input, your direct input. So that is a first step to make sure that the youths are involved in it. Secondly, with respect to investment in the youths, I'm sure most of you who are here, you went to college this year, and I don't think that there was a tuition. So that's a direct investment to make sure that more of our young people can go to college. So we have eliminated that for you. And in terms of other investments in tertiary level education, we are also making sure that we're going to have more opportunities for you. And I think the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Education would have spoken about our relationship now with Southern University of the United States to give you more. And there are two other things that we did. One, we reduced student interest, interest on student loan from 9 to 5%, and we put a moratorium on interest payments during the time of study. You may not understand fully what this means yet, but it means that when you take the loan, while you're studying, you don't have to pay any interest. That was revolutionary. And you don't have to pay it back. So that accumulated interest, which is about $15,000 to $20,000, is a gift to you. It is totally forgiven. And then the loan went from 9 to 5%. So that's an investment in you as well. So we dealt with that for existing and new loans. So that more. And the other thing we did is that we allow economic costs. Economic cost is a payment we give to the University of the West Indies for any student from the Federation. It had been stopped for law, medicine, and other areas. And we now resume to pay economic costs for all areas. So if you go and study law, it will be paid for you. If you go and study medicine, it will be paid for you. So those are the significant. And the other one we did was to increase subventions for those preschoolers so that more money is given to the parents to send their child to preschool. While it's not mandatory, we wanted to make it easier for a parent to send their child to preschool. And the other thing we did is that we are now investing back into the one-to-one laptop program with educational programs on it. So when you see the students start receiving the laptops very, very soon, they will also have educational programs on it. The other thing we are doing is running fiber optic cables to the school so that we can have a broader band and introduce the technology as a normal part of life as a student, so that you can have enough bandwidth to use your system so that you can use it as part as your education development. So we have invested heavily in just this 1 year in education, and you're already benefiting from it. So I agree with him that investment is needed in education, and we have done that significantly and will continue to do it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I want us to address the question still from the young lady from Keon High. If the PS for youth empowerment is here, yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, young lady, for your question. Youth is actually something that, although there is a dedicated ministry for youth empowerment, youth is supposed to be mainstreamed across the entire government service, meaning whatever any ministry is doing, youth is supposed to be a vital component. This is from the planning stage right down to the implementation stage. So just as we are doing today, where young persons are being asked to give their input, we're hoping that going forward, as we try to build a sustainable island state, that every ministry would call on young persons to give them some guidance, to ask them what are their suggestions, what are their recommendations, and how we address the various challenges. Young people are usually filled with ideas, lots of talent, lots that they have to put forward on the table. So it's not that we expect that we are going to be doing things for young people, but rather young people will be given the support, the assistance to do things for them and for us. Also, we're trying to encourage young persons to be more included, to be more active agents for change. So for example, programs within our youth department, such as the Green Thumb Initiative, which speaks directly to environmental sustainability. This provides opportunities for young people to be active agents in preserving our environment, to ensuring that Saint Kitts and Nevis can be more resilient to all of the negative impacts from climate change. So you will be hearing a bit more about youth and how we plan to work along with you in the month of November when we celebrate Youth Month, and our Honorable Minister at that time should have something exciting to table in Parliament soon. Putting you on the spot, Minister. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I have one more question from online, and then I think there's one more from the floor, and then we will move to the close of this session. I think we're around lunchtime period where all of us get a little antsy for some lunch. So, and just before that, I wanted to address the gentleman there as well who talked about when you come back home and investing, and I think the PM did an excellent job of that. But also to note that we have persons, notwithstanding that, who, if you're in the diaspora, who give great assistance to the country, you can still contribute to your country, you can still invest in the young people, you can still do a lot of things, whether you're in the borders or outside of the borders. So that doesn't preclude you at all, and we welcome that. So this final question from online. I think it's worthwhile, I'm quoting here, I think it's worthwhile to raise the point of crime as a threat to sustainability plans, particularly in light of increased violence in schools. Crime wasn't mentioned in the presentations today, but national security traditionally receives a sizable budget. Can anyone from the national security apparatus speak to the cost of crime and highlight what the strategic approach is to addressing increasing records of crime and violence, especially amongst young people? So that was from online, so I'll ask the PS of National Security to address that. But before she does that, I think there was one more question from the floor. Yes, young lady right here.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Dakota Henry. It wasn't really a question, it was just to back up what the gentleman from over there said from BHS about the CBA program, and the gentleman here answered and said there are no negative effects. I would think that he probably meant what are the long-term negative effects that it could have on the country. We know that the CBA is basically allows foreigners to have second citizenship or passport. And we know that sometimes the foreigners come down here and they put like different businesses or institutions down here, and it could sometimes use up the land, and that could have a negative effects on the locals if they want to build up businesses for themselves. Because sometimes, sadly, we know that foreigners get a chance to implant their businesses in countries rather than the locals, and that's something that we really have to look into. And but yeah, that's basically what I had to say. I think that there are negative effects because anything can happen out there. It could have wars, different things that they would just come down here and use up the land, and sometimes the locals don't have a say. So yeah, that's basically all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You wanted to?
I just want to add something to that, kind of provocative, but I think since the matter has been raised in this particular way, of course, we are speaking about a sustainable island state. Our population is relatively small. The FS, in her own presentation earlier today, spoke of taxes in general terms. If we are going to really advance towards achieving a sustainable island state? Have we thought what is the view of the young people, I would ask, with regard to the population being increased in different ways? For example, providing incentives for selectively groups of people, maybe graduates, maybe agricultural farmers, persons who are engaged in agriculture in a significant way and would need large numbers of people. Because if we are going to achieve the sustainability of this new state that we're trying to create, there has to be a particular level of the population. Population has to be, in my opinion, of a particular size if it is going to be achieved, if it is going to be achieved with minimum cost in terms of the additional investment, infrastructural development, etc., that we would have. How do the young people view an increase in the population of Saint Kitts and Nevis in order to be able to better finance the achievement of the sustainable state that we speak of? I'd like to have their comment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Douglas. I don't know if any young persons want to take that challenge on to answer that question. So I'll let you think about that for a little bit, and while the PS for National Security addresses the question on crime.
Good day, all. With respect to crime, the government has prioritized and addressed crime as a health issue coming out of several consultations regionally and internationally, so much so that we have created a task force which has impressed on us not working in silos. What we recognize is that too often our ministries, our agencies work independently when we realize that we can accomplish so much more if we were to work collaboratively. So we have reintroduced the MAGIC program, which would address the youths in primary school going into secondary school. And this really puts attention on grades 4, 5, and 6, and it is added into the curriculum. I think that thus far we have, there are 4 schools that have included it in the curriculum and has started. It's a 10-week program, and I'd like to thank the PS of Education for, prioritizing this initiative. Additionally, we are looking at revamping the Explorers group, right? Which again would be collaborated effort, not only with the Ministry of Education again, but with social development and youth. Thank you. We are looking to professionalizing our security forces and investing in it. We recognize that persons, don't put enough emphasis on the security forces and the value and the value that they bring, not just to the community. And we are looking to, and we are professionalizing it. So we are encouraging our security forces to further their education, and again bring it back to the Federation, and then we can look at other programs. We recognize that we cannot again work in silos, and the Commissioner of Police has included various ministries to work along with his team in order to bring new initiatives as well. What we're looking for, and since we have youth here, we're always looking for recruitment into our cadets and the Sea Corps. So we have recently reintroduced that to, for discipline, for exposure, because we are professionalizing it, and we recognize that the youth play a vital role in our fight against crime and violence. There's much more that we have to roll out. I would not want to put my minister on the spot, but there are quite a number of initiatives for 2024 that we are excited about. Thank you.
Right. If you allow me 2 minutes, thank you very much, PS. I just want to put in very short presentation now that crime across the Caribbean has increased. The worst is in Haiti. We recognize across the Caribbean, when the assessment was done, is the transshipment of small arms, guns, and ammunition. The Caribbean has become a very hot place in terms of making it a transshipment point of drugs up to the north, and accompanying that are the guns. So if you look across the region, it's increased across the region. That's one of the first things that is to recognize, and that came from an assessment from the RSS. Hence, CARICOM took for the first time to have a symposium to deal with crime and violence in the region. And therefore, we would have met a number of times, and the PS alluded to it, where we are dealing with crime and violence from a public health perspective. Why? This matter of crime and violence, interpersonal violence, is possibly the highest in the Caribbean region. We are higher, second, Latin America comes second. The Caribbean region is the highest, has the highest rate of interpersonal violence. It's higher than North America, South America, Central America, higher than Asia. Whatever the reasons are, that is the reality in the Caribbean. The World Bank did a study on it. The IMF also commented on it, because the CARICOM, and I think in the time of the senior minister, Dr. Douglas, they were asked to study it as it was a Caribbean issue. It was studied. So the scientific data suggests what are the causes, but not only that, the scientific data also suggests how to deal with it. Central America and Latin America adopted what was recommended, and they saw a significant decrease across those countries that implemented these strategies. The Caribbean, as was pointed out by Dr. Isben Williams, as he had been an advocate for this, delayed in implementing the scientifically proven strategies and solutions to deal with interpersonal relationship, with interpersonal crime issue within the region. And therefore, that is what dealing with crime from a public health perspective is. So what we have done, we have now put a task force together in Saint Kitts and Nevis, because it cannot be dealt with superficially. You can dampen it with all kinds of irregular measures, but it will rise again if you don't deal with it at its root. So while you are strengthening the security apparatus, you have to implement programs that are so broad-based, dealing with the issue of interpersonal violence. It is not just the obvious crime that you see, but it means gender-based violence, violence with youth against youth. Whatever the measure is, we have determined that they need to be dealt with comprehensively. So we have done a number of critical things. One, to be the first to put that task force together. Two, to introduce a number of programs that will deal with crime at the various levels within the educational sector. As was mentioned, we're bringing back the MAGIC program. We have brought the OASIS program, which is in collaboration with USAID. That is another program we have also introduced. And then to introduce the broader initiatives to deal with crime from a public health perspective. The matter is here, we are going to need everybody on board, not just in Saint Kitts and Nevis, but in every country across the Caribbean as we deal with it, whether it comes all the way from down in Guyana in the south and all the way up to Bahamas in the north, in terms of CARICOM when we speak to this. And therefore, I would like to hear from the youths today, if we have time, what are the ideas of how we can deal with the matter? Instead of me saying all of the things that the government is doing, and I think a lot of them were mentioned by the PS. If we have time to deal with it, or we need a different forum. We need a different forum? We need a different forum. But we are going to create that forum because we want to hear from the youths of Saint Kitts and Nevis and the youths from across the region of how we are going to deal with it. But nonetheless, I think she has pointed out a number. One, we have introduced a fusion center for the first time. That fusion center is also using artificial intelligence to track, and that is helping us significantly. As you can see, we have captured people at a much higher rate, and that is because we have implemented the technology into detection and also how we can prevent. So that is something that we have done. Two, we are breaking down the silos within the different agencies, and we are bringing them together so that immigration, customs, police, all of them can work together at some level to make sure that we have the best opportunity to deal with the crime. Three, we are partnering with regional and international partners. We are introducing for the first time radar system to track what is coming into our borders and other type of technologies, which I will not speak to, that we are also introducing from the crime detection and crime prevention perspective. So we have invested heavily in these, and we have increased training as well, expanded the police force, and we are strengthening the defense force as well. Notwithstanding that, once we go to implement dealing with crime from a public health perspective, this is where all of society comes in. But from the church all the way down to students in schools, there would be involvement so that we can deal with it as a national issue. If the Caribbean does not deal with it from that perspective, it will be a problem affecting the region. We now have taken the decision that we have to now implement the scientifically proven strategies of how we will deal with crime within the Caribbean region. But not only that, we have to also adopt some homegrown strategies while we implement the broader framework of dealing with crime from a public health perspective. So we want to hear from our youths as well with respect to this, of how we're going to deal with it. So I think we need to create the forum to get their perspective. Thank you.
Question regarding the increase in the population. I know it's a very polarizing issue. And usually when we speak to increases in the population, the mind goes to places. Either we speak to the amount of kids being born, and we also speak to mass migration. With regards to the first issue, this is something that we're seeing brought up in a lot of developed areas. So we're looking at Japan, South Korea, even places in Europe that have a very aging population. They are the extreme cases of what can happen when your population is not being replaced frequently. And I'm assuming when the census results come out for this year, we're going to see how Saint Kitts is faring and what we can do to not encourage more youths to have kids, but what is the issue? Why aren't people going out having kids? What is the issue there? Because what we see and what we find is that even though there are so many initiatives being presented in these larger countries, they're not being taken advantage of. So it must be something else, the reason why people aren't having kids. The second one, mass migration, is that I think is extremely important because there's a lot of fears around it. And based on what I've seen and heard here, and also what we see abroad and the conversations around it, is that it's a lot of fear. And it's not enough. The conversation is important, but it's also important that we don't stoke people's fears. So basically enhance them, but it's also not enough to wave them off and say, oh, you're worried about nothing. People are worried about their jobs and job security and the future for their kids and if their kids are going to have jobs. But I think it's important to also not stoke fears of xenophobia, where we see people coming in and we say, oh, they're not welcome here. And so it's very important that we have a conversation where we do want to see improvements in especially areas like agriculture. That's gonna require a very large labor force. Manufacturing as well, that's a very large labor force. And to be quite frank, we do not have the capacity here. And when I speak to capacity, I mean literally the number of people on island to facilitate large industries such as these. So we will have to look to things like this, like mass migration, and ensure that we do not encroach on the rights of people here in Saint Kitts, but also that we ensure the protections of peoples that are coming in, ensuring that these immigrants that are coming in, that their rights are protected, that they are not exploited as you would see in many of the larger countries. So it is a conversation that will have to be had. It's going to have to be delicate. It's going to be very tense, of course, but I think it's important to have and ensure that it is done in a, in a proper manner, so that when it does happen, and it will, but when it does, it's done in a way where locals are aware of the situation and the people coming in are also aware of the situation as well.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Before I go to the closing remarks, I just want to also echo that we have two former teachers who have given some homework. Dr. Douglas has taught. Dr. Drew is a former teacher as well. I see they gave some homework to the students and the teachers alike. One is to look at crime from a public health issue, and the other question about population, and should we increase the population to meet this goal of a sustainable island state. So we have some homework from two prominent former teachers here, right? Yes, and the sargassum issue. One of the things we must always recognize is that we need to switch our institutions, especially the tertiary institutions, into more of research and innovation, right? Colleges and universities are really supposed to be incubators for innovation, ideas, and challenging the leadership of countries to move in a certain direction, right? So you guys are the drivers of this vehicle that we call the Sustainable Island State, all right? And it's a journey that you have to take us on. You are not just the future, you are now as well. And so I want to challenge those, especially at the CFBC level, Nevis Sixth Form College level, to have these conversations, not just prepare students just for the CAPE and exams or the CSEC exams, but carve out a time somewhere in the semesters to have these sort of conversations and come up with ideas, innovative ideas, and do some research to help. So we look forward to seeing what comes about with the sargassum, that we can turn it into cosmetics, we could turn it into energy, an energy source, etc. And we're challenging the CFBC students, Nevis Sixth Form College, to come up with those things for us. So now, as we close, I'm going to invite Mr. Kristen Petty from the Ministry of Finance, business analyst in the Ministry of Finance, to give our closing remarks and vote of thanks. Please welcome Mr. Petty.
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Prime Minister, please permit me to adopt the protocol that has already been established. On behalf of the Ministry of Finance, I would firstly like to thank all who are in attendance here at this important consultation today, especially the youth. Whether you're here in person or online, your presence shows your interest in this very important goal of transforming into a sustainable island state. Additionally, your interest led to very engaging and respectful discussion. So I think we should all give ourselves a round of applause for that happening today. I would also like to thank the contributors on the main lineup for the consultation today. We had some very insightful remarks from the Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Terence Drew. We had a powerful invocation from the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley. A lovely rendition of the national anthem by Ms. Michaela Richardson from the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College. I'd also like to thank the press secretary, Mrs. Adelcia Conifer-Lance, and her wonderful assistant, Dr. Marcus Natter, the cabinet secretary, for moderating the proceedings today. Thank you to Ms. Laverne Quealy, Senior Director from the Ministry of Finance, for her welcome remarks. They were very appropriate and helpful. To all the presenters from the various ministries. We had Mrs. Hilary Hazel, Financial Secretary for the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Carlton Phipps, Director of Statistics representing the Ministry of Sustainable Development. Ms. Melissa Henry, Economist from the Ministry of Economic Development and Investment. And also Honorable Dr. Joel Clark, the Minister of Sustainable Development et al. Thank you for your very good presentations. They're very informative, and I hope that we all can use them to change our mindset to think sustainably and not just leave here remembering that we saw beautiful PowerPoints. We have to change our mindset, as this will be a long-term goal for the Federation, for everyone in the Federation to have, and it'll take an effort from everybody to achieve them. Last but not least, I would like to thank all the persons in the background who did their part to make this consultation successful. We have the hard-working team at the Ministry of Finance. I know they were supported by the Office of the Cabinet Secretary, and whichever other departments helped, I thank you. I also thank the production team. You all tend to be the unsung heroes, but without you, we would have no consultation today. So thank you to everyone again, and do enjoy the rest of the day.
Ended, right? I don't want to say this on the live stream.
Oh, you think this
I want
is
to
good?
speak to them.
Are you finished?
Tell them yes, if you're not live.
No, the live is upstairs.
The live is upstairs? Yeah. But not on the live. Just in the room.
Unmute?
I'm not on the live yet. On the live?
You don't want to say something right now?
Not on the live.
Oh.
The room.
Yeah, we don't have a screen. I thought you wanted to go back on.
I wanted to make an announcement, but now they
Oh, you
need
could
it.
make an announcement. You want to have a control.
Thank you.